Hello, everybody, and welcome to another end-of-month PmP review. That's right, Painters Motivating Painters. Our happy little hobbyist community is ever growing, and once again we find ourselves at the end of a month wanting to review all the wonderful work done by the community. And so that's what we're going to do today. And I have two wonderful, illustrious painters joining me, which I will not introduce them. I'll allow them to introduce yourself, I guess. But Alicia, would you like to start, and then Kieran, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Alicia, Dame of the Brush. I've got my own YouTube channel now where I show you how to do things like I do.
Very good. Absolutely. You should be subscribed to Alicia. She's already put out a lot of really awesome videos on painting demons as well as some other stuff, and all of her demon models look absolutely amazing. So there are many beyond that, but I will make sure to include a link to your channel at below this video. If you're not subscribed, you should go immediately after you watch this to that link and click Alicia's and subscribe.
And over here, my name is Kieran. As Vince said, realizing that it's kind of tough for you in your position to introduce people without introducing people.
Sure. Yes. Well, it was only your first name. You're still a man of mystery. They don't know who you are or why you're here.
Right. Why am I here?
You are here because everyone knows that you are a painter extraordinaire. You come recommended by the great Malorian himself. I mean, so I don't know of a higher honor.
Well, that does come with some praise. I hope I can live up to it. Either way, I can be opinionated and share my thoughts, and have been around the brush a few times. So I guess that's why I'm qualified. We'll go with that.
Hey, there you go. All right. So for our viewers who are watching, we're going to probably have some time for Q&A at the end. So if you've got questions, feel free to leave them, either in the comments or whatever, and we'll review that. But we're going to change up a little from our past formats. Those of you who watched the previous shows, previously we just sort of jumped in and did the full month model review, and we're still going to do that. But I kind of surveyed out and tried to see what else people wanted, and there was a lot of asks for discussions of technique and stuff like that, and for more advice as we go through. So we're going to be giving more advice as we review the models, but I thought what we'd start the top of the show with is actually having each of us pick a particular model that was submitted this month that used a technique we really like, that we feel should be discussed with the broader audience, because the reality is there's a million different techniques to learn when hobbying, and you can spend a lifetime and not really master them all. But the way you do it is you share it, and that's what we're all doing. That's why we're here. That's why you're watching this. So we're going to each have already pre-selected a submission from somebody, and just to cover a technique we think they used that was very valuable that should be shared in a broader fashion. So I'm going to start. I'll lock myself on here. Come on. You can do it. There we go. All right, and then we're going to screen share up. And Alicia, why don't we start with yours? Let me go ahead and get my screen share going here.
Oh, the power of screen share. Everybody's excited about this, always.
Absolutely. All right, so can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. I could so see your screen.
All right, very good. And we should be looking at some word bearers, which were also from the beginning of the month from Victor Case.
All right. Now, there are a billion techniques that I could talk about as far as Victor's go, but the one thing that I'm going to focus on right now is his glow effects in all of his weapons. That is something that you can add to a lot of different models to bring up the level of the model. To take it from, it's okay, it looks good, to wow. And when we're doing a model, we want that wow factor. And the way the glow effects work, it's kind of interesting. You take it from a darker color to a lighter color, and that's how you pull off your glow. What I like to do, I mean, Victor obviously used way more colors than I usually do, but an easy way to do it is just pick three colors, and go from your darkest to your lightest. Like gradually, like just making it smaller and smaller amounts to where you want the. If you're looking at, let's see, the picture that you've got up here. Let me pull it up on my screen because I'm not seeing it. Because
Do you got there was another photo where you had a side angle of these vents. Do you have that available?
Yeah,
we could jump over to that. Absolutely. I have the original post right here, so we can just bring that up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you can get one
Yeah,
that really spins on the side of the claw. There was one.
Either the claw or the axe. Either one I can do.
Side of the axe, does that look right?
Yeah, that'll work for me. Now the way that he's done this is really nice. Is he's got his base color in like that very dark kind of green, and then the areas that he wants to kind of have that glow, like the symbol, is where he's really worked in his brighter colors on top. And the best way, the other thing to do to make it not just look like the green axe, to make sure that you know that it's glowing, is adding just a little bit of that in-between color. Like it's not the brightest green, but it's also not the darkest green. That little edging right off of the handle.
Yep.
That's how you get your glow effects. That's that object source lighting working for you.
Yeah, there's a couple things that jump out to me here that I think you're absolutely right in all regards, and there's a couple other things that jump out at me too. Yeah, you're right. You're calling out that little touch of OSL there just to make it look like there's green coming off the back of the axe reflecting. But what I also love is just the color choice. The model itself being in this red, it's a mid-red transition. It's not very bright. Like red is honestly when you start from a brown, like he did with these, and it's clearly agraxed around the edge and such. It's a fairly muted color pattern. But then you get to this green, and that's a wonderful contrast because it's so bright to the muted red of the model, and green is a great contrasting color to the red. So even as a piece, the green is going to naturally jump out more than it would normally because it's such a strong contrasting color to the rest of the model. So it even reinforces that glow.
Definitely. And you don't have to stick within the same color family as far as like the glow effects go. I mean, here he's even gone to like a yellowy green instead of staying with like the like dark to bright to brightest green. He's gone a little bit into the yellow range. A lot of times, like if I do like glow effects in like the eyes, I'll even go up to like the highest point possible, white. But you have to be very careful when you're doing it to get that kind of shine.
Agreed. Yeah, it's great work. I mean, this unit was obviously, if you saw all the videos on it, there's another great shot of that axe. I mean, Victor did a series of videos on the making of this unit, and it was obvious he put a lot of love and care into these guys, and it really shows.
Another important point here that I just want to add, especially if you can find me that side angle lightning claw shot.
Yeah, let's take a look here.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I want to say about it is that the center of your source has to be the brightest.
Does that look right?
Yeah, that's the one I want.
Okay.
This is the money shot. Okay. So the center of the source is your brightest point, and then it gets darker as you go away from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Is that you want whatever the sort of emanation point is to be the brightest thing, right? Think of like a light bulb or something like that. The light around the light bulb is not as bright as the light bulb itself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the light bulb, right? Because it would all just look like the same amount of light. So yes, it's an excellent point.
Exactly.
And you can really see the line of the very bright yellow. I think that the call out of the yellow is a very good point, Alicia. And the way he just traces it down slowly into this very dark green, even paying heed to the idea that there's shadows within the claw itself.
Yeah. So where I want to make the distinction about that is, unlike where you're doing other parts of the model where it's deeper is darker, it's the opposite here, really. right? So the center of your surface is not the darkest like it is on the backpack, and near the edges. It's the edges that are the darkest, away from the light source.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because if you think about, so we can see the jetpack in this picture, right? And if we think if he wanted to do the same effect here in the jetpack, and you think if this was, which we can all imagine, we've all seen like a jetpack in a movie or something where there's energy inside making the thing glow. If that was to be the case, the brightest point of this, if it were to be glowing, would be in between, in the deepest point, right? That is what you would want to be, this bright blue. And then conversely, you would want the ridges to be cast in shadow because the light wouldn't actually be falling on them. Just as if you put something very solid over a light, it's actually quite dark by comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's a great technique, and yeah, don't be, I think it's a great point, don't be scared to try stuff like this because it can, especially just to jump back here, because I think when you look at this whole unit, if you can imagine it without that green, it would be so much more sort of monotone, right, in the way it is, because you've got that bright red, but beyond that, it's fairly all in these neutral colors of these browns and blacks and metals, but then that green just says boom and makes it pop, right?
Yeah.
So it just takes it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly the thing that is one of these higher level composition things where you think about what's going to set this model apart from the dozens of others that I do in my army, right? Yep. And that's an effect that can certainly do that.
That's a great point. All right, do we have anything else to say about Victor's glow effect as a technique before we move on?
Nope, done.
All right. I think what we'll say is great work, Victor. Next time, Victor, though, I want to see you take the OSL to the next level, my friend. I want to see these claws casting light like down here on this guy's boot and stuff. I want to see him go all the way. That's my, not that he needed to here. OSL can easily also make a model look silly if you overdo it, but he's definitely a capable guy, and I'd love to see him take it all the way up and watch that in effect. All right. Kieran, do we want to move on to your pick there?
Yeah, sure. So this is done by a fellow named, calls himself Dice Miniature Paint Guy. And I want to point out a subject on here of where he has clearly done some spray technique to get color transition. So I'll bring your focus down to the lower end of the model on the skirts of the horse, where he's transitioning from dark to white, or from white to dark, depending on which way that your eye draws you. Now, initially I thought that he probably did this with a spray can, but could easily have been done with airbrush as well, if you have one of those at your disposal. I will say that this is something that you can always try as a bit of an experimental thing to give that transition, and you can use it with a whole variety of colors, even ones that are on the opposite end of the spectrum, as long as you do your transition smoothly enough. When you're doing it with a spray can as opposed to a brush, my advice to all those that you want to try this out here is it's really, really finicky to the angle that you're going to hold your model as you spray it, okay? Because you have to think of the angle of approach and make sure that it's not just going to cover the whole surface. Right? Have either of you two tried this out in some capacity?
I'll be honest, I'm scared to spray.
You shouldn't be. Yes, I have. I'll throw up. I was going to throw up some nights later today where you'll see the same technique in effect in a couple different ways. And what I'll say about it is, because I just got my airbrush recently, and so of course you get a new toy, you got to play with it like crazy. But what I'll say about it is the way the way that he's done this, and you can do it even with a spray can, is, you know, I think the angle point, Kieran, is exactly right, because you want to make sure. So if you think about it, the way you want to angle it, this model is straight up and down right now, right? It's at a 90-degree angle. If I were to spray straight at it at a sort of perpendicular line, I would hit the thing straight on, and it would disperse the paint evenly in a circle, right? Like the outer edges would be the thinnest, going to that at the deepest, and I would have no control. But if I tilted the model away so that I'm pointing down the angle of the of the skirt, right, then I'm going to get much less at the top and much more down at the bottom where the paint is, where the majority of that arc. The front of the spray coming out of the front of a paint can is just like your arc of sight coming out of a model. Just think of it like your arc of sight. You want to make sure you're pointing the right way. That's all there is to it.
Right. Yeah, and thanks for that. That's a good enough way to describe what I'm after. So you can get that gradient at a, and I keep calling it a gradient, but the gradient of transition from one color to the next at a slower pace or a sharper transition, depending on where you are tilting that model facing your spray source.
Yep, and I'll give a slight plug to, I want to say it is, I'm going to hate myself here because I can't remember the name of the channel, but I believe it's Color of the Gods, which is a great paint channel if you're not familiar with it. But Color of the Gods has a video where they take you through, where he does this with a spray can. Yep, it is. It's Color of the Gods. One of his most recent videos about 4 weeks ago, and he has an unbelievably beautiful blue to purple transition on like an Eldar vehicle or something. And he does it and he's doing it with a can of white spray paint. So it's not, it's nothing amazing. There's no high-end, expensive airbrush. It's just all in the angle, the amount of pressure, and then once you take that white, the key is you're going to get a better coverage, and then he just glazes a color over that and uses the white to create the smooth transition between what was the base color, which was purple. But it can definitely be scary to point a spray can at at a model that you've just spent a lot of time painting. So I certainly understand that.
Yeah, and that's certainly true that you can then go and tint this. I mean, we're dealing with black and white, so if that's spray cans, just that you bought out of the store, and those are the only 2 colors you have available, you can still work this kind of thing and do some transitioning of color of other things with it. Like, there's no reason you couldn't go after this afterwards and put on a blue glaze or a red glaze and change that tint.
Yeah, and the great part about it is it would be fairly easy with this, because remember, when you really thin your paints down to a glaze, the white is going to soak that up and instantly tint that red color, whereas the black is going to be very resistant to changing color, right? Because if you a glaze touching a very dark color, it changes the tone very little, whereas you just touch the white and boom, it's instantly a different color. So, it doesn't. It's a very sort of simple thing to do when you're dealing with a stark contrast like that.
So just to finish off this this whole idea then, so the practical applications for this kind of technique, of course, is things like large surfaces of fabric, capes on the back of your heroes, and if you're doing vehicles, of course, in the 40K land, that's a practical application for this as well. So try it out on those, peoples. Go to it.
Absolutely. My one closing final note to Dice Miniature Paint Guy is I think you may need to thin your, if you're doing this with an airbrush, as you said you were, I think you may need to thin your airbrush paint just a slight tad bit more, because I can see some spotting here and such over that, and that's a little heavier than you would normally see if your paint is really thinned down. So I'd say either lower your PSI or thin your paints more, or both. Like, it's just because that looks like it came out a little thicker than maybe you wanted. So, but yep, there you go.
Good. Well said.
All right, Alicia, any final thoughts?
No, you guys covered it.
All right, you gonna give it a shot? You gonna give it a try? You gonna point a spray can at a nearly finished model and roll the dice?
That's not on a commission. I'm not.
All right, maybe the next time you actually somehow miraculously have the free time to paint one of your own models, I guess, right?
I would challenge you next time you do a caped model. Do that as your first. That as your first step, and give it a go.
It's true, and if it's a really deep ridged cape, it's nice because you can just turn it so it's sort of perpendicular to you. You spray straight across the ridges of the cape, so it's angled completely 90 degrees away from the angle of the spray. You'll only hit the top edges. Flip it exactly 180. Spray the other direction, when you turn it back so you're looking dead on at the cape, what you're going to see is the top is white with a natural fade to the lower portions, and you will have missed the recesses completely. I mean, you glaze back over that. It's amazing how fast you can do a tint like that on a deeply ridged cape.
I'll have to remember that.
So,
So Vince, what did you want to
there we
look
go.
at?
All right, and so my pick. My pick is this guy right here. So this is Tyler Glover, and Tyler had actually submitted this last month, but we missed it. Tyler didn't file it under end of month submit, which he was brand new to the PmP. No fault there. No harm, no foul, Tyler. It's all good. And I was sad we didn't get to review this. This was his finished Griffin. I believe this is the Noble out of the Island of Blood box set.
Sure. It is.
Yep. And it was just a great model. I love this Griffin. I love the model itself. And the reason I picked this is because, let me just say, when I saw this, so Tyler is brand new to Warhammer and pretty brand new to painting. I think in his comments he said he's been painting for a couple months, month or two. Okay. And this is absolutely phenomenal work for a month or two. When I saw the feather work here, I mean, it blew my mind. This is so good. And let me actually zoom in here just a little more so we can make that a little bigger. Yeah, because you can see, like, I'm at like 300% on this, and look at how smooth those colors look on those feathers. So, and so let me talk about the technique he used. We asked him about the technique, and here was his answer. He painted the whole thing gray. Wolf 1 gray, I think is what he said he used, which is a very light gray tone. So if you're in Vallejo, that could be like a Vallejo light gray if you're in model color or whatever. And he then did multiple washes with Seraphim Sepia. Controlled washes with Seraphim Sepia. Okay?
Yep.
And then he did a very light and slow white dry brush over the whole model, and that's it to get this effect. And I'll tell you this: when I read that, Tyler, I thought you were a liar. I'm not. I was like, BS, my friend. That looks way too good for that to be those number of steps. Now, here's what I'll say: Tyler is not a liar. I tried this exact technique as he said it, a very simple 3 steps. I had never really thought of putting Seraphim Sepia over gray and the key is multiple coats of Seraphim Sepia. So you got to do about 3 washes, I think, to really get a rich tonal shift like this to be covered throughout, so you don't have any spottiness or patchiness or anything, you know, because washes will leave that if it's not evenly spread.
Yep.
And where I was doing this was on horses. So for my Bretonians, and then doing the white dry brush around like their fetlock and stuff like that, and I will say the effect was exactly the same. So Tyler, thank you very much for giving me a great technique. I think that's just, I mean, it looks so clean. It's such a rich, interesting tone of that sepia over that gray. It's a simple technique, and man, does it look good.
You know, the painting world has always gone on and on about Devlin mud. Previously, and more recently, the Agrax Earthshade, and I've heard you and colleagues refer to it as liquid talent.
The old liquid talent, absolutely.
Yeah, I use a lot of sepia as well, and it's an unsung hero. It's obviously a brown tone, but it's more on the yellow end of things rather than on the reddish or brown end of things. And yeah, it does great work. I use it on a lot of skin tones for me. That's where I probably employ it the most. But what this tells me, and what you've talked about here, is it really shines a light upon the greatness of most of those ink washes. Well, I call them ink washes because I'm an old school guy, but shade washes that Games Workshop puts out. It's such a wonderful product that I wish I had 15 years ago when I started to paint these things. So much easier, and it does a lot of the work for you. Lets the model do the work for you.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Sepia has I used it a lot on my Skaven, but I was always putting it over, like you said, flesh tones or browns. Occasionally, I would use it on reds and stuff like that, just to kind of like give a ruddier tone to the red. I had never thought of it with gray, because when I think of gray, gray is a very cold color. It's sort of this, cold white black mix, and it just hadn't occurred to me that sepia would really interact interestingly with that. And yet, what you get out of it is this rich sort of yellowish tone. And you're exactly right. I think sepia is really an unsung hero. I think Agrax I've really turned away from a lot, because it makes if you don't do a lot of layering work back over top of that, it really is going to make your model look dirty, right? Very dingy. Whereas sepia tends to be much cleaner and bright, and really just more of a rich yellowish tone.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think that, to me, I love that technique. Gray, sepia, a controlled white dry brush. The other thing I want to say about that is, I think another thing, dry brushing is obviously the newbie's best friend. I think that's how a lot of people see it. You learn to dry brush, you see what you can do with it, you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. You try to dry brush everything. I am also not one of those people that thinks dry brushing is worthless or something like that. Dry brushing is a very important tool in your toolbox. You need to have it. You need to use it. You just need to know when to do it. It shouldn't be the hammer, because every problem isn't a nail. But when you've got wonderful, beautiful ridges like this, where the model is so well sculpted, like with feathers or something that has a naturally rough texture, hair, fur, anything like that, that's your great candidate for dry brushing. And the other key there is, I know when he did this, he clearly didn't just slop paint on. He really got that brush down to almost no paint left, and was willing to take the time to, run that brush over those feathers 100, 200 times, just very slowly, leaving the slightest traces of paint every time. And by doing that, he didn't get that chalkiness you can often leave behind with dry brushing. Instead, he just got a very nice, smooth color on the edges there.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think that feathers is one of those perfect things. People tend to get caught up with dry brushing on too large a surface. I think that's sometimes often the trouble. We talked about capes a little bit earlier, and when I was first learning how to paint, that was the easy way to get paint across a cape and have it stick to the folds and only the folds. But of course, it resulted in the chalky texture that you speak of, because it was putting it on too heavy for too broad a surface.
Yep, I think you're exactly right. The larger and flatter the surface, the less dry brushing is going to look good, right? Because the more it's just, dry brushing makes brush strokes. Almost by its very nature, that's what it's going to do. When you're only getting paint on the very edge of something, there's nothing there's no surface for you to see the brush stroke. But when you try to, if you take the haunch of a horse and you try to just dry brush over that, then it's just going to look like you're just going to see a big brush stroke, right?
Okay.
Yeah, Alicia, any other thoughts before we leave Tyler's work behind here?
I think Alicia's on some delay.
I'm impressed with that.
All right, fair enough. That's good enough.
Yeah, I'm impressed with it. There we go.
Fair enough. All right, great work, Tyler. All right, so with that, that's our technique segment there come to a close. There was lots of great ones on display, but those are just 3 that I think caught our eye. Let's go ahead and move through the rest of the month. Sound good to everybody?
Let's get to it.
All right.
All right. So we already talked about Victor, and I know last month we had talked about tunas, so I'm actually going to jump up here a little. And we have I think our first submission of the month. I think we actually did touch Kieran's last time too. Kieran, if you don't mind, I think we talked about yours last month.
Past. Don't worry, there's more of those later.
There is, absolutely.
There's more of those later in March.
And that brings us to this guy. Never heard of him, Matiram, and his first submission, which was his Skinks. His first finished skink unit, which we have all seen to great effect in some recent battle reports where they've been poison blowpiping things down. They recently bagged themselves a Phoenix, so that was a nice little win for them. But yeah, here we go. what I like about Materim's skinks is I very much like his color palette choice. I love the orange and the red. I like the blue eyes, setting them off. I think that that's a great choice. It's a great contrasting little piece of color. And most importantly, perhaps, I love the fact that he is basing these models. I see some different grit in there. I see some grass. And they look so much better for it. So I'm glad that he has finally come around. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. I know that Alicia's probably reserving herself from ripping into these things and telling us how she really feels about them. So I'll deflect some of that. I actually had a brief conversation with Josh about lizardmen skinks and that kind of stuff. And what I said to him that I want to see here is I want to see an alternate color on those crests. It doesn't have to be as bright as the blue that he's got in the eyes, because we don't want to do that. But there needs to be, I feel, something else about those crests that can be distinguishable, and you can even use that as a tool to distinguish between one unit to the next. I've seen that used across other lizardmen armies, and I can't argue with the effectiveness of it. That if the crests of your skinks in one unit are a distinctive color from the crests of your skinks in a different unit, then that actually works. So that's what I'd encourage.
So maybe if he went for, like, say, a bright yellow color on the inside area of the crest here, and then wash that back down with a little Fugan orange or something to kind of tint it back toward the skink, but still leave a lot of that yellow on the coming out through the highlights, something like that. So there'd be a bright spot up there, but it'd still be tonally aligned, something like that, is maybe, or would you want to see it go even more bright? Maybe going all the way into like a green or something.
No, I still think that we need to not shock the system with an entirely gaudy color in there, to stay selective to one color that he uses throughout his army, because he's got that predominant color throughout the flesh tone of his skinks and with them overall. So you can play with that, and you can have a different one on each skink unit. So these ones might be green or yellow, as you say, whereas another unit might be a blue or even a purple, and that'd be fine.
I like it. Alicia, let's hear it. Let's hear some thoughts. He's your husband.
All right. Well, the two things that jump off at me, like right off the bat, that he could do to elevating the eyes, that one like what I was talking about before, with like white and shine and whatnot. Even if he just put just a little tiny dot of white just on the top of the eye, not to be a pupil, but more to be a significant a signifier of the eyes are alive. They have a little bit of light reflected in them. That would have been a way to elevate it. Another way that he could have done the back scales. The back scales, that he's got them good right now, but if he had just taken a little bit of a lighter red and kind of outline like the ridge on each scale, that kind of brings it up again. I actually told him about this, and he was like, I don't want to do it. It's going to take forever. I'm like, I want it to look good.
That's always the great balancer in all these things, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to say a lot of the people that we're gonna critique here for the rest of the month are probably going to say, I did the best that I could in the allotted time that I gave myself, or the allotted time that I was willing to spend on the models. And that's largely true. I mean, we could all do better, but how much time you want to spend on it is also part of the map measure.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you, here's what I'll say to that. So to the higher highlights, I agree. And if time is the concern, and we all understand that, sometimes with a unit like 10 skinks that are like 60 points, you're like, look, I'm not spending an hour a skink. I get that. So when it comes to that, you got to formulate an attack strategy on how you paint it. So those ridges, those scales are really deep. And honestly, they could take a dry brush. Now, again, I would prefer to go in and individually highlight, but again, we'd all prefer to have, if wishes and whatever, I don't know, the thing about candy and nuts. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts. But so they're deep enough they could take a dry brush. And yeah, that's a nice butchering of that saying there. And the way you could do it is if you know sort of the steps, if you have an attack plan. So if he did the red of the back first, right, and then washed, I'm going to guess he did that in a red and then threw like a carrion bird crimson over that to get those deeper colors. Am I right there?
He just told me that he doesn't have Caribou Crimson, so I don't know if he used it all, spilled it, whatever, or if he used a different color.
Okay.
Let's just go with it. Yeah, he used Caribou Crimson then.
Okay, sounds good. So what he could have then done is then taken, say, something like an orange or a brighter red, maybe like some kind of hot red color, and he could have dry brushed again, like take it, get the paint mostly gone, and just really worked them, you know, on a quick brush back and forth, and caught the edges of the scales and made them pop a little bit. And he would have even had to be careful with it if it's one of the first things he does. So he hasn't painted the rest of the model yet. Starts on the scales, he can just be sloppy as all get out, just be running that brush all over, accidentally hitting arms and fins and everything, and who cares, because it's the first thing you do. And that's a good thing to think about when you're going to do it, when you're going to have a step that you know is messy, like a big, heavy dry brush. Do that first, right? That way you're not needing to go back and do color work or corrections or be very careful with your dry brush. So the order in which you attack your model can save you a lot of time, because it can let you employ techniques you wouldn't otherwise be able to deploy. And maybe that would fit more in the time box. But I will say they are a good-looking unit. But of course, we can always. There's always something we all wish we did better on every model. That's always true. Absolutely, Kieran.
That's always good.
Absolutely. Anything else we have to say for the skinks?
The only reason why I'm even sounding mean to him right now is because he told me to rip into him to be Simon Cowell. So
you've got the green light. All right.
Yeah, I got the green light, so it's all right.
I don't think you were being mean at all. Not at all. I did some Pegasus night.
Hang on a second. So if you're going to be the Simon Cowell, which of us is going to be the Paula Abdul?
I think I'll call dibs on Paula. I'll just start randomly talking about other things while we're reviewing. I did some peg nights. I don't want to spend a lot of time on all of our models. We've all seen them. I'll only just click them up here for a second to say I love flying models because there is absolutely no limit to what you can do with basing on flying models, as I hope I proved here. So don't hold back. That's the key with basing.
Okay. One thing I want to say about yours before you go is I want to know who your gardener is. I want to know who your gardener is that can make a bush grow on top of a pillar.
Well, there's some dirt up there, as you see, and that is moss, my friend. Very thick, heavy moss growing up top there. In my mind, that was like a potted plant or something that had broken away and was growing up there and had overgrown its original thing. Why that is really there is because I had to put a big, heavy metal weight on the top of the thing to counterbalance Mr. Peg Knight going over the side to prevent that thing falling over. And then I had to disguise that with moss.
Okay. I will buy into your creative license then.
All right.
Yeah, I was about to bring up the fact that when you're doing stuff like that, make sure that you balance it with weights so it doesn't fall over.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I had to bury a big metal like washer up there to hold it up top. So, yeah, don't be afraid to go get some metal metal washers or whatever. You know, things like that are a good tool to have around because you got a model leaning one way. A nice metal washer or two will quickly balance that out. Usually much heavier than plastic. Whoa, that was interesting. Sorry about that. What happened there?
You jumped to the home button.
I guess I did.
I guess.
All right. So here we have Whoopi, and his demon. Now, he had a whole bunch of pictures of things he had submitted, but this burning chariot is what I really wanted to focus on here.
Okay. what I want to say about this one is that the point that I brought up earlier of spray can transitioning, Whoopi does it an entirely different way, and he's sort of I recognize his painting by this kind of technique as he does very thin washes upon washes upon washes to do this transitioning between two opposing colors. So he goes blue to pink here in a very smooth transition in a lot of different places, but in a very, very different way than Dice Miniature Paint Guy did.
Yep.
So that's
yes.
something that I want to highlight and talk about.
I absolutely agree. Whoopi is the master of doing, I think, exactly what you said. Like, I think he combines both a lot of glazing and then very light sort of repeated dry brushing, right? And he goes, and I think he alternates back and forth between the two. The dry brush to create the color transition, the glaze to bring it back in line, and then so on and so forth. And I think he just repeats that over and over. Whoop, I'd love to hear you describe this in more detail, but he really does. He often achieves just really dynamic and dramatic color transitions, right? Blue to pink, and you can see the purple to pink, and all sorts of all this. And we're going to see a couple more examples of this later from Whoop's stuff.
Yeah. So again, yeah, like you, I've had a discussion with him about how he does this. Kind of asked him off camera a couple times about what I coined the phrase of organic transitions. That's what I've decided to call it. But yeah, he describes it as he dry brushes, and then he washes, and then he moves to a different part of the model, and he's constantly moving between colors as he goes through the model, and focuses on one area for a little bit, and while that's drying, he moves to a different one and comes back and does the next layer. So it's not necessarily a giant time-consuming thing, although it seems like it because he's attacking the same spot on the model probably a dozen times for an area with different color tonal touches. So,
and what also,
hope that,
I think that's perfectly a legitimate thing to do with a model like this. I mean, this Burning Chariot, you probably got one of them in your army. It's a bigger model, right? It's this beautiful sculpt of all this fire and flame and crazy demon stuff. You know, this is the kind of, if you don't want to take a lot of time on, 10 halberdiers, hey, I get that. But when you got a beautiful model like this, I feel like, that's when it's time to step your game up and put in the hours, right? Because this is the thing that's going to draw the eye.
Yep. Good on you. All right.
All right, Alicia, any thoughts before we leave Whoop's chariot behind here?
This might be one of those times when a glow effect would have been nicer. I agree. It looks like a great model, and he's definitely spent a lot of time in it. I think it's awesome looking, but I don't know. I kind of want the way that it looks to me is almost like a tree. Is the best way I can describe it. It all looks like it's one continuous kind of tree form. It doesn't look like there's magic or fire kind of shooting out of the thing's mouth, which is what it actually is. Because he's done so much work on these transitions, it all looks like one fluid piece.
So you would, yeah, okay, I get it. So you would actually prefer a harder transition between the demon and the flame.
Yeah, just a little bit, or like just some kind of denotation that it's not just a continuation of the demon's body. Got
it. All right, that's fair. I have one piece of quick feedback for you, Whoop. Whoopi, what is with this base? What's going on down here, buddy? This burning chariot is going across perfectly green, even grass. No fire trail, no burnt grass, no rocks, no nothing. Come on, brother, you can do better than that. Go out in the yard, find some dirt, a stick, something. Paint this grass black. I mean, come on now. All this work on this beautiful transition, so we can't put one color of paint on the green grass down here? So,
yeah,
that's what caught my eye. They planned this burning chariot's cruising across Augusta National here, I guess. Just very, very well trimmed battlefield.
It's a little known fact that most Warhammer battles are fought on golf courses.
Absolutely true. At least that's what the terrain would lead you to believe.
Yep. Well, fire grows grass.
There you go. All right, our next one is from D. Shagmitz here. who had his some elves, wood elves, blade guard, and blade riders. Alicia, I'll let you take the. I'm just going to kind of scroll through here, but you just painted, a whole lot of wood elves, not too long back. So I'll let you take the lead. Any thoughts on these?
Let me find. Let's see. I like the pumpkin, like the basing, kind of folly
Mm-hmm.
type motif he's got going here. I think it's a very neat color. He has taken time to at least paint the horses different colors so that they're not all the same horse going over and over again. Um, I'm not sure if it's the flash that's causing this, but unfortunately they don't look very dark. Like they don't have a whole lot of shadow to them. But like I said, I think that's probably the flash.
I think we do have some washout here,
Um,
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going to say that as well. I think that the flash photography, Mr. Shagmetz, try to turn that off for the next round of photos, and we'll see some greater depth in this. And the reason I can confidently say that is he's done similar stuff for this Wood Elf army in months past, and we do get a better look at the gradient of color that he's put into them there than in this batch of photos that he's put up this month. So I think maybe more my criticism is not about the paint jobs, but it's about the photography.
And I think this is also his display board he made for it, which I think is also great. I really like that as well. Really, I love a good display board. Really ties the army together. I love his Warhawk riders with their little orange masks up there.
Yeah, they're orange hats.
Mm-hmm.
That's an underused color. I think that can really go far. Let's just talk about orange for a second, if we can, and how.
Yeah, well, this is definitely the appropriate picture to do it.
We very little see that in the Warhammer land unless it's on fire, right? Like that's the one element that we always see orange on, but almost nowhere else. The last time I saw it used to great effectiveness across an army-wide atmosphere was on a 40k Tau army, actually, but not really
Now,
anywhere else.
have you seen Reef's Demon Army?
I don't think so.
He did all of his Nurgle, I think, stuff in orange, like a very nice orange to yellow transition, but orange being the primary color.
Yep.
So that's and very unusual choice. Nurgle stuff is almost always just the same sort of sick green. But as with all things, Reef went his own way, and I thought it came out very well. I agree completely. Orange is a tricky color to use because it really can look fake, I guess, right? Like when you look around in the world, there's not a lot of orange things, is what I would say.
Yeah, that's true, and that's probably why it's such, I don't want to say unpopular color, because it's not like people are calling down orange, but it's not easy to get to. So, so Mr. Shagmans, I applaud you for putting it to good liberal use here and embracing it.
Yeah, I like orange, actually. It's a great color. I was just scrolling through his pictures. He's got a Headless Horseman mini. I would like to see that model by itself, because all I can see is kind of fuzzy. But it looks like it's really cool. Like he's got like a cowering peasant on the base.
Oh, it's tucked in at the edge of that. Yeah, tucked in here at the edge of this unit. He's throwing his flaming pumpkin head.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, fantastic.
He's hurling his flaming pumpkin head by the looks of it.
That's I hadn't even noticed. That's great. Now that's a Wild Rider right there.
You bet.
Actually, that's what Sisters of the Thorn it's in with.
Oh, I guess it is, yeah. All right, well, he should be in with the Wild Riders. Come on now. The Headless Horseman, he's no sister. That guy's wild all the way. He's the original Wild Rider.
Ghost Rider.
There you go. There we go. Another orange, the orange helms there. I think my one piece of feedback for you, D, would be this. I like the color palette here that he's used. I really like. In most cases, these horses are all the same, but in most cases he does vary up the horses, and I think that is the right thing to do. You can look in the background, the Glade Rider horses are varied. I think my one note would be, so I think what's going on, let me see if I can find a picture of it that really shows off what I'm talking about. here we go. So if we look at these reindeer here, and we look at this highlighting, what looks like it's going on to me here is it looks like we took a rich chocolate brown color, we base coated it, and then we highlighted with the next shade up of brown. And what I feel like is, and these lines are very stark. Now when I pull away from this, if I'm looking at a distance, it's going to look fairly correct. But when I get closer, right, instantly I can see this very hard, unnatural line between the lighter brown. And there's two things you can do to diminish that effect. The first is make sure you thin down this upper step of paint. And two, make sure you 50-50 it with the color underneath it. And then three, if you really want to go all the way, take the color underneath it and do this normal thing, just like you're doing it right now. So go up to a higher color and highlight. Then take the undercolor, whatever this brown is right here, this chocolate brown, and thin it way down, like probably a shade below a glaze. And run that over the whole model. Like, not the whole model, including the elf, but over everything that's brown. And by doing that, you're going to smooth out those transition lines. It's still going to be visible, but now you got to get a lot closer. It moves it from noticing it at 3 feet to noticing it at, 6 inches, right? And just that little extra step. It's not very time-consuming, but you can always glaze after. You can take your base color or whatever was underneath, thin it way down into a really soft glaze. To do that, you don't want to use water. You want to get yourself a good glaze medium, something like that. There's lots of different glaze mediums out there. Lamia medium would be an excellent one if you're addicted to Citadel, and so you don't break up the pigment, and it will still stick. You get it on your brush, wipe most of it off, and just get a nice even coat. You're not using it like a wash. You don't want it to gather in the recesses. You're just doing a nice even coat over it. That was my only feedback. I love overall the aesthetic of this army is beautiful. The hand-painted banners are beautiful, and his basing work is absolutely phenomenal. Like, just looking at those Wild Riders, the logs and such underneath, it's great.
Yeah, I can get on board with your criticisms of that, and I maybe want to add that core surfaces and big fabric surfaces are the kind of thing that I think we all have to come to grips with the idea that we can't do the simple 3-stage process that we do on a lot of other parts of a smaller model. And what I mean by that, just as an example, is quite often you can get away with doing armor with base coat, highlight, wash, done. Sometimes you can get away with that. With these big open surfaces, we have to come to grips with the idea that we're going to have to do 5, 6 different color transitions throughout that.
Absolutely.
So embrace that, accept it, because otherwise it does look too stark, like you're pointing out.
All right, very good. Leave D behind. Move up here to Marcus. And Marcus got some chaos finished. We can see a little Magath Lord still in progress in the background, but he's got his chariot, or his Gorby's chariot. And I guess that's probably a Putrid Blight King, right? I would guess that guy is.
Seems to be. Yep.
Absolutely gross. As is everything Nurgle.
Well, I'll start in on Marcus's business, and that is that he's the kind of painter that has proven in the past that he's going for a little bit more of a natural look instead of the fantasy look, even though he's dealing with fantasy figures. His Nurgle skin has always been that pale, kind of sickly stuff instead of a bright green, ugly-looking thing. So I appreciate the color palettes that he's restraining himself to and being more natural. So I'll give you good credit for all that. There's one extra thing that I want to bring into here about his, if we can look at his chariot chassis, which I think was the other previous photo.
Is that look right?
Yeah, so he's doing some of that oxidizing weathering on the metal. So you can see it pretty easily on the axe face, as well as on the Chaos Star in the very front of the chariot. Okay, so he's doing that kind of bluish oxidation on those things.
Yep.
I think he's kind of doubling it as a little bit of a glow in some respects as well. But one other thing that I want to add too, and he has added crud and weathering to this chassis as well. And you can also see it on the rings of the wheels. He's added extra, I don't know if he's just done sand or some kind of other basing material that he's glued onto there to give it extra texture, like it's picking up crud from the ground and spattering it around like it naturally would if it was rolling through the snow. So good extra detail on that one. So I want to give thumbs up to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you called out the oxidation, which is certainly what I was going to mention as well. So Citadel makes obviously the special effects paint, the Nilic Oxide. I cannot recommend that Nilic Oxide enough. If you haven't got some, I will say to everybody listening, do yourself a favor, go get yourself some of that Nilic Oxide. It is unbelievably useful for both doing corrosion effects on copper-based metallics that would actually corrode in that way, that would oxidize. But it is also fantastic for ghosts and glow effects and things like that because it has this naturally eerie, iridescent tone to it that I've never found another paint to duplicate without extreme amounts of work. Its texture is also very interesting. Now, and he certainly deployed it here, I think you're right, as a glow effect. I think he's also used it as some corrosion, like I think here around the wheel, you see a little bit of that corrosion in effect. What I'll say is that if you're going to use it as a glow effect, like I think is what he's doing on this Chaos Rune on the halberd, what works well with that is I think we need to go back to what you mentioned earlier, Kieran, which is the center deepest point should be the brightest, right?
Yep.
And whereas here we have this consistent tone throughout, so it doesn't really look like it's glowing. It really just looks like there's sort of maybe oxidation gathered. Whereas I feel if this was white in sort of the deepest recesses of the line or something near to it, and then the oxidation was around, if this color was around, it would look like a bright glowing line cutting, glowing rune cutting out of the halberd, casting this sort of eerie glow. And I think you could go white in, go back over with a little bit of the Nilic Oxide, and then just drag another highlight over that line with a 50-50 mix of white and Nilic to bring it back out then once again.
Yep.
I think that would achieve what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of leant towards the idea that he was going corrosion more than glowing in these situations. Anyway.
Yep.
Okay. What else you got on this?
I will also say I love his flesh tone. Like, this guy has a great flesh tone. Yep. That's just the final thing there. Alicia, any thoughts before we move on?
I love how he handled the scarring and open wounds on the back of, I guess it's a gore beast?
Yep. There you go. That guy.
Yeah, I mean, he goes for like this whole natural effect there, and he gets it. I mean, it's all kind of bruised and old looking. It's not like the big oozing red bloody looking things that we're all used to with the fantasy stuff. This is more like realistic old wounds in the cold.
Yeah, just
and I think he's done a very good job at that.
Absolutely. All right, let's move it on. I painted a trebuchet. Yay. Okay, let's go over here. So this is my buddy Tom, and I happen to know that this is his squig herd, and I'm a big fan of this unit. So this is his squig herd, and you can see the goblin herders back here, and some spiders replacing squigs since he's doing an all spider themed army. And I guess probably right now Alicia is having a seizure because I know Alicia's a big fan of spiders.
Oh, I hate spiders so badly.
These ones aren't moving though, so that should probably be okay, isn't it?
It's a little better. Of course, my skin starts crawling. Yeah, I'm gonna get out of this chair and kind of just run.
All right. So do you want to say some commentary about this before it creeps you out too much?
I have to say, as much as I hate spiders, which is a lot, um, I have been impressed with his modification work to make his goblins all spiders and no squigs. Um, I mean, having like I love this giant filler piece that he's got with the log, like all the squigs kind of, all the goblins kind of uh, and it just amazes me how many of these fun models that he's got for this. Like I didn't think there were that many spider models in existence.
Well,
At least I hope there wasn't.
there probably aren't. He gathered a lot of these things from the Ragnarok model and all that action.
Yep.
The balls of webbing are a fun thing for me. I like those. He must have stolen from lots of other people's models to get the volume of those that he actually did.
Yes, I believe this was several orders of like. You're right. I think most of this comes from the Arachnarok because the Arachnarok comes with just tons of little spiders and ball webs and spiders crawling on goblins. And I believe he just ordered a lot of the individual pieces and then mixed the other stuff around here like the log and the stone and stuff like that. The little sprite out of the wood elf or glade guard bits that comes with those.
So my commentary on this thing that I think that we can all take a little bit from is it's an exercise in composing a unit. So what I mean by that is the composition of this unit has not just a sea of spiders, but as Alicia said, it's got some flavoring within it. The big centerpiece of that spiky branch that's standing out there with goblins riding on it. The balls of webbing. He's got some. Is that supposed to be some sort of flinger over there on the left-hand edge?
I think it's just a little banner.
Okay. But
yeah, just a little banner.
Yeah, I got to admit that I've only really started to do this kind of unit filler and adding in flavor to the bases and variances over the past couple of years. I didn't used to do it at all, but I do like it more and more. And I think you got to find that sweet spot where you can do that too much, like you can have too much filler and not enough rank and file unit guy for the sake of game effectiveness. But I think it's something that everybody should explore. So I want to encourage people to do that. And here's a good inspiration.
Yeah, I don't have much commentary on this because Tom already got a bunch of my commentary on this because as he was building it, he would send me photos and I'd say like, you need to do this, you need to do this, and you need to do this. So he already got an earful of my commentary on this one. One thing I will say is the slimy water here is another technical paint in action. This is the Nurgle's Rot technical paint. Another fantastic technical paint if you want to. I don't use Citadel's paints, but I do use their technical effects line. And I really think you can make great swampy, mucky, gross water with that Nurgle's Rot. It has a nice shine to it, and this is just some undercoating of greens and then layering this over top, and so on and so forth.
Good. All right.
All right.
Let's move on so that Alicia doesn't get any more heebie-jeebies from that.
There you go. All right, so now we come to Ryan Easterling. Finish Skaven here. And so, Alicia, I think you had something you wanted to comment on the Grey Seer. This is the older Grey Seer model. Up until recently, basically the only Grey Seer model, unless you were robbing a Screaming Bell.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think he's done a good job getting all the paint where it needs to go. It looks. When I was talking about the glow effects earlier, this is one of the models that I think could best benefit from the glow effects, because you've got the wearing front. They're in this dark green right now, and they're just kind of there, and it looks fine. But I think if he used the effect, basically like the 3-color method, like a little bit of object force, it could just punch that, just a little, hey, that looks really good.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Something simple like that could really push it ahead.
Especially with Skaven, where it's warpstone everywhere. Like they love their glow effects because everything is a glowing green rock. So get real intimately familiar with your greens and green-yellow transition colors if you're going to do a Skaven army, because you got a lot of opportunity to do that at warpstone. My one note to you, Ryan, is I get the sense you're using a gloss varnish or something very near it, because this model is very shiny. And I think you probably want to look into a matte varnish, because that shininess will make the model look. It makes it look not. It makes it look very inorganic. People, things in the world aren't shiny unless they're like polished metal. Almost nothing has a real shine to it. So I would say, if you're using like a gloss varnish, I would go out and get yourself a can of like maybe some Army Painter anti-shine matte varnish. That's my particular favorite. Never dusts or anything like that. But there's a good host of them around on the market, and I would look into something like that. It will cut out that shininess.
I also want to tack on to that gloss varnish also flattens out a model, oddly enough. And what I mean by that is you can often work very, very hard to get color distinction when you're doing your layers of highlighting to make the deeper recesses look much darker than your upper highlights. And when you put a gloss varnish over the whole thing, it flattens that out, oddly enough. Even though it leaves the reflection of light, it doesn't leave, it hides the distinction of those colors transitions.
Yep, because the dark is going to reflect light just as easy as the light colors, because they're all glossy now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here we've got Victor, who painted his Tau Ethereal, and I really love this model. I love his color palette that he used on this, and I love the cape and how it came out. I think this is a great piece.
Yeah, yeah. This is an exercise in smoothness, is what I would describe this as. The violet that he's used throughout this cape on the model. Can't say anything bad about it. He's nailed it.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I've got very little feedback for this, Victor. This is a great piece. The gem up top is done well because it does go all the way to white, like you were saying, Alicia. So it does seem a very bright, glowing gem at the end of his little magic stick. I don't know anything about 40K. I know these guys are Tau, and that Tau are weird-looking aliens. But I'm sure that magic stick does something in the game. But it looks magically. Good skin color choices, great. I love purple and white with that gold. It's a very rich brownish gold, so it really works well, like almost drifting into a very copper tone in many places. Yeah,
composition-wise, I think you get with the color choices, it makes you know that this guy's an important guy. He's not obviously some plebe running around getting dirty in the muck. He's got important things to do, and the color choices reflect that.
Yep. I think one point I'll make real quick is, if you watch, Victor did a video on this, and so if you're curious as to how he did this model, he has a series on it. And what I'll say is, one thing that is true and that he used in this video and is that brush control matters. So on big flat surfaces like this, we've talked about it a couple of times, when you watch Victor paint this cloak, his brush is moving like this, straight down the cloak in the directionality of how he wants the color to transition, right? So he's not just like painting horizontally to get purple on here or dabbing or something like that. He's doing long, smooth strokes. And the directionality of your brush can often mean a lot into how the final piece actually looks in your color transitions. Always make sure you're moving your brush in the direction you want the piece to seem like it's moving. So the cloth is flowing down, and he moves his brush in that same direction.
People will realize this more and more when they embrace the idea of having really thin paints, that they may have to do multiple layers to achieve the transition, and I'm sure that that's what Victor did here. I didn't actually watch his video, but I assume that that's how it goes. There's multiple layers of very thin paint and going in the flow that you described.
I'd say you got it exactly. All right.
Okay.
Alicia, anything you wanted to add?
No, you've basically covered it all, except that I imagine that this guy is actually a lizard man. Because they jumped into their spaceships, and this is what they are now.
Oh, that's where they came from.
Okay.
That's where the Tau came from. They're just like 40,000-year evolved lizard men. We've solved the mystery of the origin of the Tau.
Yeah.
There you go.
Those fat guys finally got off their thrones and started walking and developed some muscle structure.
There you go. He's ripped too, this guy.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of lizardmen, hey,
Oh, wow.
Paul Huner and his Slan, which is unbased because he's waiting on 9th edition to figure out what base would be most appropriate for this guy. But this is I love Paul's lizardmen because he's doing them in this monochrome black and white, which is such a bold choice because it's like limiting yourself on the colors you can use is often one of your best challenges as a painter. And to do a model in black and white and have it still look like a living organic thing is no small task. But he's just used a couple other little highlight colors in the purple and the orange yellow of the eyes. And I love this little frog. I think he looks great.
Alicia, what do you like about this guy?
I particularly like the galaxy that he's got on the back of his head. He's created an entire galaxy on the back of this dude's head, and it's really just an amazing, fun little effect. And from what I can tell, I mean, it could just be that the galaxy is dry brushed on there. There's just so little paint to show what it is. And it's just so simple what he's done.
Yeah, I would argue that that's airbrush usage. I know that Paul has embraced the airbrush world, and it's also
okay.
to harken back to my initial talk about spray transitioning. Paul's done this on here as well. Of course, not just on the Galaxy, but if you look at the fists of this Slan and the feet of the Slan, he transitions black to white. Again, using sprays in some capacity through airbrush in his case.
Yep.
I mean, he can tell me if I'm lying. But I'm pretty sure this is heavy airbrush usage.
And I'm sure this is also probably a good Zenithal highlighting too, as well. Zenithal highlighting. I'm sure he started from that before he went in and then did more painting on this guy. You can really feel the Zenithal highlighting on this guy.
Yeah. Tell the people what you mean by that.
Sure. So zenithal highlighting is the easiest way to explain it is let's take this model. I'm going to prime it all black, and I just standard sort of black paint, and then I'm going to turn him so he's now like that, right? And I'm going to spray him with white spray paint. That's the simplest explanation of it. You can get more complicated. There are different angles you can play with to do this. You could go gray at 45 degrees and then white at 90 or whatever. But it's effectively mapping out the mini for you. So he's just priming it a couple times. And so in that top-down spray, the spray, because again, it's just like your forward arc of your unit, it's only going to hit what it can hit. And so it's missing all the undersides of muscles, and it's naturally picking out the highlights for you. And I know Paul is also a big fan then of after that of just doing a black wash then over the whole model. And that then will make your recesses very dark, picks out anything that missed, and really gives you basically a map of the model for when you then want to start painting it.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Just wanted the world to hear that, because you hear the terminologies and not all folks know what that means.
Yep. No,
I'll let
absolutely.
you.
My final note will be, I think that he did exactly what you were talking about earlier, Alicia, with his eyes. Like, if you look at that, that is starting at a ruddy brown and then coming all the way up to the yellow and then that little black spot. Like, there is probably 4 or 5 different transitions in that little tiny eyeball. And it looks great because
Also
of it.
in the weird little purple notches on the side of the frog.
Yep.
Too. Mm-hmm.
All right. Great stuff. Can't wait to see him get on his base, hopefully in 3 weeks. So there we go. That's all. It's fingers crossed, folks. All right. Moving on. I did some stuff. Did my standard bearer and some other knights. Victor did his big. I don't know what this guy is. I mean, I know he's Tau, but I don't know what the name of the unit is. Sado Sun.
I think they're supposed to be.
I don't know what that is. Shadow Sun. Oh, that would make more sense. But this is a nice example of edge highlighting in effect, which works very well on like robotics and tanks and things like that. You don't get to do it a lot in fantasy, but where you can do it is if you've got armor with big, sharp, overhanging edges. It can be a nice trick. You can see here just the edge traced around it. Gives it a more cartoony look to a point, but it can also really cut the edges of the model and really break it up. As usual, Victor always going top-notch with his backgrounds.
Whoopi Womp would be so excited about that.
He would.
He's always a fan. I think that this has good applications on some fantasy models. What immediately springs to mind would be the new dwarf Ironbreakers. I think that they would be a good application of this, because you don't have a lot of, you do have a lot of sharp armor edging on those things.
Yep.
So that can work for it.
Absolutely. I actually the Stormfiend that's in like the full armor that looks like he's in power armor. I use the edge highlighting on him just to break up the plates because it is a plated sort of armor.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you do have to do a little bit of a smooth blend here to get as effective a use as Victor has. So, again, going back to when we were talking about horses, and using your example there, you can't get this to look really all that good if you're just going to put down the base color, do the wash around the rivets, and then bring out your sharp highlight for the edge. You do have to be willing to step through a few gradients to get to that edge. Even though your final edge can be really sharp, you got to be willing to put down a couple gradients first.
Yep, absolutely, agreed. Yeah, good stuff. Alicia, any other thoughts? I'll take that as a no. All right. Oh, okay.
When applying highlights, don't be afraid of going outside the color, because as you can see with Victor's stuff, he goes outside the color quite a bit. I mean, he's gone orange to yellow again, and it works for the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, don't be afraid to move up that rainbow, right? Like that can often be a very good trick to performing your transition. Agreed. All right. Here we've got tuna sandwichify with his big ghoul unit. Crypt ghouls there, looking very bloody.
Yeah. Too bloody, I think.
So I like his color choices. I like the stark white flesh, the purple little highlights of whatever this is supposed to be on their back. I'll admit I do not understand the new Crypt Ghoul models. I don't get what's going on with them. They look strange. The model is strange to me. This has nothing to do with his paint job. but like where did they get their hands? They look human sized, and yet they have like the hands of rat ogres. But here's what I'll say about the blood effect. It looks like he's either glossed it or was using blood for the blood god here or something like that, which is always possible. But yes, I think that as much as I love the idea, I think you've gone a bit too much in a monotone blood here. So blood is one of those things that it's fun to splatter it all over the place, but the problem is this doesn't look like blood. It looks like the unit is wearing red gloves.
Yep.
Right.
Or had some fun with a paint can.
Right. Now, one of the keys to doing blood is not one color of red. Blood is a lot of different colors of red and purple and brown, depending on how fresh and how dry it is, how oxygenated it is, all of that kind of thing, right? And so, ideally, what you want is you want a little bit of this bright red, where the fresh blood is, and then beneath that you want, because what you're going for here, I think, Tuna, is clearly like some caked on blood. This isn't all fresh, I don't think. Not every single drop. So I feel like if we went for like a darker red, a lot of this, then we transition up, and we transition up, and a lot of times you can achieve that. You don't want it to be a smooth transition with this blood because, again, it flowed. It's not a piece of cloth. So stippling is often your friend here, where you're sort of attacking the model and just hitting it with points, like a pointillism type of thing. That can often be your friend to get that blood spatter effect, right?
Here's a couple of things that I would say about the color of it, because that's absolutely a key point. First of all, blood is a lot darker than we think it is. It's not Mephiston red or blood red right out of the pot. It is very much darker, and it is almost brown in a lot of cases. I think the times that we can accept that a little bit better is when it's on metal edges. Like, the more commonplace that you see blood used on miniatures is on those sword edges and axe edges. Now, it can be brighter on that, first of all, because it's believable that it's just new. It's right. It just happened seconds ago. Secondly, it's on top of a reflective, shiny surface, so you can accept that it's going to be brighter and more red than it is going to be brown. But in every other case, splattered on fabric, splattered on skin tone and flesh, always got to be a whole lot darker, I think.
Yeah. I think that what could serve you best is thinking about how the blood got there. And if these guys are going like through people's chests and stuff like that, like they should be, the blood on the hands and like the tips of the fingers should be new blood. Whereas like the stuff that's going up the arm should gradually be going brown. To get your caked in effects. The same on the face. The blood that's a little bit closer to the mouth should be redder, going to the brown. And I think that would serve you better.
Yep.
So I guess in summary, I would say your bloodlust has gotten the better of you, Tuna.
What I will say I love about this unit, and just sort of my final closing point is, I do love the color composition of it, and that he's chosen to do this really primarily in sort of three colors, in this white, this purple, and this red. And I like the color composition. I think if the blood had been very dark and such, with just the bright red highlights on the edge of very fresh blood, I think you like A+ all the way, because it shows. I think this unit on the table would really pop, and it shows really that you don't need to go through a lot of colors. You know, this is really a three-color situation, but it still pops, and it's good contrast. So it is an excellent color composition on the unit itself.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right. Good stuff. Moving on. Here we have Naren's Aid, he of the ponies, from the Hammer Bros, with his banner bearer, which this picture does not show. We need to zoom here. There we go. Now we can see just how ridiculous his BS. Nobody is ever going to make a mistake in a Naren's Aid Skaven game. Of which model was your standard bearer? The guy with the 8-foot-tall standard.
I used the Doomwheel banner on my Battle Standard Bear, and I thought that's gigantic and over the top, but no, now it feels tiny comparatively to this one.
Yeah, and I think this is Ash the Banner guy who did this for him. I think, and Naren, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think this was Ash the Banner guy who did this, and he does obviously amazing banners, so no question there. I love the freehand. I love the gray seer with the scythe. As to commentary on the model itself, I know Naren has been working hard to progress his painting, and is really like where he started. He was just trying to get paint on models to get them on the table. I think he's found a lot more love of the hobby. So I think if you look at this versus some of his earlier models, he's definitely progressing a lot, and I think that's good. His highlights here on the green, it looks like he's probably got he's using a little two-tone transition there, and that's very good. He's got clean lines on a lot of this, like the copper edging on the gauntlet is very clean. I like his Skaven flesh tone. What I would say is you could probably take those highlights maybe even a little farther, pop it up a little more. But I really think it's really coming along, and I like the piece.
Yeah. The one thing I'd slip in with here is I want his fabric to be a different color than his armor. That's all. That's all I would say. So his lower cloth needs to be something different.
Yes, because he is very green.
Yeah.
The sword as well. The
this,
sword's got that same green color on there too. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just trying to flip over so we could see it without making sure it wasn't a reflection.
Yeah. That's another thing that he could do. He could give a shot to the glow effects is on the sword. Like if the sword is actually a piece of, warp stone. That's what it is. Instead, like if you wanted the sword to be green like everything else, that way the sword could stand out along with against the armor and the fabric.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess my criticism here is just with the sword being green and the fabric being green and the armor being green and the flag being green, it's too monochrome is all. So when you find time to spend a little bit more time on it, and I know you're painting hundreds and hundreds of rats, sometimes in the same sitting, give this guy a little more attention, mix it up a little bit. I think that would help you.
All right. Good stuff. Well done, Naren. All right, so here's Michael, who had been busily painting up his dwarves. He of Du Bois. And here's some of his dwarves. And I believe he was painting these for brawlers, right?
Yeah, he painted all this stuff up for brawlers and got super sick of painting all of his dwarves and then decided after brawlers that he likes painting them again.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Just as an aside, to take it back from painting critiquing for a second, there's nothing that motivates a painter better than two primary things, and that is a deadline to go to an event and the enthusiasm that you get from participating in that event to go back and do more hobbying. It is universally true, and it happens to me every time that I sign myself up to go to some tournament or event. Always there.
Especially when you see all the other armies there and get inspired by the things they've done or they've tried, right?
Yeah, so for those of you folks that are out there lacking motivation or finding you need a little bit of a cattle prod to sit down and paint some models, sign yourself up for something. Commit your dollars to go to an event, and you will find that you will finish all those other units because you'll be lit up to do it.
It's a great point.
And then you'll come home and continue doing what you were doing before. The cycle continues. It's great for it. But so tell me about this. Is this all done within 1 month? This whole army? Do we know that?
Well, yeah, everything that he's got here, he did within the month.
because these were all the things that he had to add to his army to get ready for the for brawlers. Because he had painted a lot of stuff for his army prior, and he was pretty much done. I mean, he's been the only one playing with painted models for the majority of his army for a while, but he picked up a couple of things and didn't have them painted, and then he was kind of goofing off, and then they signed up for brawlers, and he was like, oh crap, I need I need this and that.
Yeah, so there you go then. Could that be a better example of what I was saying? If signing up for an event a month and a half ahead of time motivated Michael to go through this many models in a month. Think about it, people. Think about all you painters out there. You need a spark. There it is, in perfect practical example.
Yep. And I know he was speed painting a lot of this, so I don't want to be too heavy-handed with any critiques, because obviously when you're trying to get them on the table, that's the dark side of it, is that sometimes it can make you rush some models. I guess my one note would be, it seems like there's, well, besides stop using such a flash on your camera from an inch away, I feels like a lot of the stuff didn't have. Now, is he using washes on this, Alicia? Because I feel like a lot of these things weren't washed very much, if at all.
I think he was using some washes. They do look better in person. I will go ahead and say that his flash has washed him out pretty good.
Yeah, and that could very well be. It might just be that we're losing the shadows, like because the metal looks very monotone. But that could easily just be because there's a flash an inch away from that dwarf's, hammer.
Yeah, a lot of his dwarves are metal on metal with more metal. All the metal.
Well, no, it's a great example here. I love he's taken this armor, which these guys could have been just a big block of silver, right? Like that would have been I'm sure that would have been a legitimate choice because that armor feels metal to me. But he didn't do that. Instead, he went for this green and gold, and so I think it makes this unit stand out. I very much like a lot of his color choices that he's done here. I love this sort of forest green. I really like these guys, the hammers, how they look here with the green and gold. Green and gold just are fantastic colors. They go together so well. And he's got the blues and reds scattered throughout. So I very much like his color choices. I just felt like the metal all looked a little monotone, but that could just be the flash washing out the wash, ironically, or the shade.
Yeah, I think he shaded the metal.
We all understand.
But I'm not 100% sure he shaded the skin. Now that I'm looking at him again.
Yeah. On the runes.
Next time he brings his dwarfs over, I might have to. What about the runesmith?
I said on the runesmith, it certainly doesn't look like there's any wash on that. But overall, I want to commend the man for going through all that in a short period of time, and I had a chance to ask him if this was the first army that he got to completion, and he said it was. So this is something that he'll remember as an achievement for the rest of his Warhammer career.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, heroic effort, Michael, and really, it looked for the amount of time you had and how much you painted. I mean, they really do look great. I'll say, given the constraints, there is no doubt this was an absolutely heroic effort. All right. So, Kieran, I do want to actually show this model real quick, just because I know it is yours, but I'd like to just take a look at it. This was your Tyrion conversion, if I'm correct.
That's right. Yeah, I had to play a game with Tyrion, and I didn't have a Tyrion.
I like your Tyrion, and the reason I wanted to talk about this was obviously because of fire, right? That's why I wanted to talk about this. I thought maybe you could just give a quick go through on fire and why you painted as you did, because a lot of people, including the heavy metal team, often does fire in exactly the wrong way, the opposite way. But you did it the right way, and I'd like to maybe have you talk about that for a second.
Yeah, this one is actually probably a little more obvious because on this photo, or on this paint job, I actually did it pretty quickly, so I didn't smooth the transition very much. But the point that we're trying to get at is the bottom of the fire is the hottest part of the fire. If you're at a campfire ever, it's right nearest the logs that it's going to be white, and as it trails up to the sky, your fire gets darker. So it goes through the transition of yellow to orange to red to brown to black. Um, and so that's the trail that the true fire looks like. So that's what I did here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost the reverse highlighting, right? Normally you think as you get up, you come toward the light, you go lighter colors. Fire, it's exactly the opposite, right? You have to start at your near white, at your hottest point, and then come down to come up, as it were, to a darker tone.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy, and that's another photo that was taken with a flash, I think. So washes it out a little bit in some of the other parts, but all right, there you go.
All right. Yeah, good work. I don't have any other notes for you. I just wanted you to, I don't want all of us to review our models. I just wanted to talk about that because fire is always an interesting thing. I also want to go ahead and show this, even though Alicia, this was yours, just because I feel we need to all take a moment to appreciate what you did for Materum here. If it's going to let me actually show the picture. Hey, there we go. As I know that there were many nights that you were up till 5 a.m. making this big display board for him for Brawlers. So could you maybe just talk about what you did to make it?
What I did to make that is I got a display board, like just a regular cardboard display board is what it's sitting on. And we bought some, we went to Lowe's and I bought some really heavy-duty foam insulation in like these big 2-foot by 2-foot sheets. And I carved the mountains out of that. And as you can see, like all the mountains are kind of layered on layer. I just used toothpicks and regular, like kids' Elmer's glue to glue them together first. I just used the just a regular craft knife to kind of make the indentions, and then a sandpaper block to get it all sanded down. I think the hardest part was painting it, actually, because you can't spray paint that stuff because it's foam, and something in the spray paint will melt foam if you ever try to spray paint it, unless it's completely water-based.
It's the propellant in the spray cans that does that, more so than the formulation of the paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right.
So I ended up, because of that, I ended up having to use just big ass bottle of acrylic paint and just go and go and go from there.
Yeah. I think a good note here is if you're ever going to do a big display board, do not try to do it with your like any kind of Citadel or Vallejo or your dropper bottle paints or whatever, anything like that. Go out to any hobby store, art store, buy yourself a giant bottle of cheap acrylic paint. Just like, you can get them in giant bottles. They're not good for models, but for something like this, they are more than apt, and you'll spend less money than you do for probably a pot of paint from Citadel, and you'll get a giant bottle that'll last you for this board and many more.
Yeah, you can, like, though the stuff I used was Anita's all-purpose acrylic paint. It's like dirt cheap and did the job just fine.
Oh yeah, for things like this, I mean, you shouldn't really care. I mean, I spend $5 Canadian on a pot of Citadel paint. That is, like, is it even an ounce? I don't think it's even an ounce of paint. And then you go and go to the craft store and you get 5 to 6 ounces of it for $2. I mean, that stuff's fine for scenery. Go to it.
It is 0.4 fluid ounces in a pot of Citadel paint, 12 milliliters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. The board is, I believe, what you're describing is MDF board. The insulation is MDF insulation foam.
I'm gonna go with yes. It was over there in the home insulation thing. It was big. Yep. It was a block. It was solid.
Yep. If you just go, it's basically hyper compressed insulation. If you just go into your Lowe's or your Home Depot and you look for MDF board or MDF insulation, this is what you'll find, and it is super useful for making display boards or other big pieces of terrain. Yeah,
I
excellent work all around.
I would however, recommend that something I didn't do that I should have. Get a breather mask when you're there. To get some kind of mask because I inhaled a lot of insulation and I think I probably have cancer now.
Oh, from your standing. Oh, from all your standing you were
What?
doing.
Yeah,
Is it from all your
exactly. Because
standing?
it gets everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, sand outdoors, wear a mask, and also you can also buy a really nice, simple like hot cutter for these off of like Amazon that'll slice through this board. It basically looks like a tuning fork, a big tuning fork with a wire running down the middle. You can make them at home yourself. There are things on YouTube, but whatever. They're also not that expensive to order for a couple bucks off Amazon. And if you're going to make a lot of terrain, they are very useful because then you can slice through this stuff. It cuts right through this MDF like butter.
Well,
So it's a worthwhile investment if you're going to be making a lot of terrain.
a hot knife, like I think that's what it's called. It's a hot knife. You can actually buy those at hobby shops over there with like the big foam stuff that they've got. That's not good for making terrain, but that way you don't have to go on the internet unless you want to.
Yes, me personally, I like not leaving my chair, but hey, whatever you like. Yes, absolutely.
Well, there's instant gratification to think about. And instead of waiting a couple of days to get it, you can get it immediately.
That's true. That is true. All right, let's move on here. All right, Paul. So Paul Kuhner had his Skaven display board. Also, speaking of display boards, for one of his recent tourneys.
Yeah, this one's a big one.
Now, I believe.
Double decker.
Yes, absolutely. Really creates the underground effect well. I like it.
Yeah, I think I like some cool additives that he's put in here. He's put in some mushrooms, his glowing crystals, and he's got some stalagmites hanging from the ceiling too. You can kind of detect those.
Tights.
Some good additives, yeah. I never know what the difference is. Mites,
he's
tights,
got mites
up,
and tights on the board.
He does, yes. Tight
so
to
there
the
you
ceiling.
go.
Yeah, so I meant whatever one you were thinking of.
I'll give it the mnemonic device you're looking for to remember is tight to the ceiling.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
There you go. And Alicia, I think you had mentioned something earlier about we talked about a lot about the lighting and making things really glow, and I think that you had mentioned the crystals here as being another candidate for that. That maybe we could have went to even a higher color on the edges of those crystals.
Oh, definitely. Like if those crystals got elevated to like the 9th degree, like Vince's weapons on his guys, I think that those would just stand out and just bring this up. I mean, not to say that this is awesome. Like, I love his water effects that he's done on this thing. The fact that it's multi-layered.
Yeah, this is a heck of
There's just a lot of work in it, but oh yeah.
Yeah, I could see this as maybe like some light white dry brushing around the edge or something, right? A very light blue, like a sky blue around the edge, and then maybe just some very light whites around the top edges or something. All right. Yeah, it is a beast. Beautiful work, Paul. Alicia did some rot flies, if you want to see how to make those, as well as her skull cannon and sort of everything here. You've got some videos on all those, right?
Yep, I have a video on almost everything that I put up this month.
Yep. So you can go watch all of those. Great work on all of them. I will say, as I commented on your video, I can't watch any of your Nurgle videos. I'm sorry, it's too gross. Just because when people start talking about pustules and boils, I get uncomfortable. When I'm talking about it, it's fine. You're absolutely right. Like, when I say it, it doesn't bother me. But when you're describing painting like the sick and the split skin, I'm like, oh, your technique is amazing. You do great work. It just grosses me out. But I did watch the whole Skull Cannon video and loved every minute of it. And I love the very unique paint scheme. I don't know if I've ever seen one in this blue, ever. and I think it looks absolutely great. So.
Before you gloss over Alicia's stuff too much here, I do wanna highlight something about the rot flies.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's jump in there. No, that's fine.
Pop up a photo of rot flies. What I like is that you've captured fly wings in a very simple way, and I wonder if you did some similar attack to this as what Vince was highlighting earlier about Tyler's wings that he did on his Griffin. Is it just, are you simply doing a wash over a base coat and then a very light highlight? Tell me about it.
Okay, I've got a base coat, and then I've got a dry brush on top of that. I've inked it. Then I've got mine's a lot more complicated. I wish I had known that there was an easier way to do this, honestly, but I think mine works. And then I've got just a small like little liner highlight, and then a dry brush up from that.
Okay, because it looks good.
Basically,
I mean, it looks good.
They really do look like fly wings. Yeah, I mean, it's just great work on these.
Yeah. So, but you arrived there in a much different way than what Tyler was describing earlier. Yeah, that's okay.
Yes, because I've got 5 paints involved in just the wing.
Okay.
Now, let me zoom in here. Now, is this some blood for the blood god on the guts, on the exposed guts?
Yep, just a little bit of blood for the blood god on the exposed guts.
Yeah, always another great technical paint in the line. I really do love that line. And that just has that nice sheen to it that really makes it look like fresh, exposed, bloody guts. That's good use of that. All right.
Good. Yeah, that's all I'm about that.
No, that's fine. Absolutely. I'm not trying to breeze over all of our work. I just don't want to, obviously we don't just want to sit here and talk about our own stuff. But absolutely, if there's a technique or you catch something, either of you feel free to stop me. I am more than happy to go in and take a look at those. We talked about Dice Miniature Paint Guys Black Knights earlier, so we kind of talked about those already, but there's just the whole unit. They do have a very nice look as a whole unit, for sure.
Yeah, the overall effect and the reason this caught my eye in the first place, I think it was because of looking at the whole unit and the spray transition that he did makes it look spectral and ghostly, and I think that's a good effect for the unit as a whole. That means more than just the individual model in this case.
Yep. Absolutely. Dice also had some Empire guys here, so we got both the living and the dead horsemen coming in. Some pistoliers. Again, different color horses. Good work. A lot of similar techniques as we've been talking about in play here.
Yeah. And another good usage of green and red together. I think it's one of those color choices and color combos, I guess, that a lot of people avoid because they think it looks Christmassy. But if you're either not a Christian or you don't care about whether it looks Christmassy, go with it.
Absolutely. I think my one feedback for him here would be, again, like when I see these hard color transitions between the gray and the brown, if we had just done like maybe a layer over top of this of that underbrown, it'd cover that right up, and it wouldn't cover it up completely, but it's a shorthand way that'll really smooth out that transition. That doesn't involve layering it up and doing 5 layers of paint through a very long transition on a piece of leather. Right.
Indeed. Okay.
All right. Oh yes, he also. But yeah, busy month here. Yes, he also has Blood Bowl Norse, which I will say I don't, is that werewolf model from Blood Bowl Norse? I feel like he's from Malifaux or something, but
it's not a Malifaux one. I think that's that might be the Forge World Skin Wolf.
Oh, that you're probably right. Yep.
My thing of note here is his much darker skin tone that he's gone to here on these guys. He's not gone your typical Caucasians. He's much deeper in skin tone, and I think that's a good exploration.
Yeah, these guys clearly never wear shirts, right? They're out in the sun all the time. stealing heads, raiding villages, playing football. That's what these guys are doing. And yeah, the tan shows it off.
Okay, that makes more sense to me because I've been looking at these and I was like, these look like football players.
They are, yes. It is from Blood Bowl. They're football players.
Okay. I was wondering about that.
The guy up front's carrying a football, Alicia.
Yep, it is
Yes,
quite
I saw
literally.
that. I was like, why is he carrying a football?
It is quite literally fantasy football.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I don't feel so stupid now.
You're fine. Yeah, great work. Oh, another really nice thing here, just I want to call out. He's doing the beard effect, the stubble effect here on a couple of these guys. And that's
even on the top of the head of that one guy not wearing a helmet.
Yep. That is just a great effect. So I very much like that. I think that's a great way to, if you've got a male, I wouldn't recommend trying that on your female models. That's going to look a bit strange, but I think on your male models, that can be a really, really good effect, especially if you're trying to go for a wild type of guy like this. You know, they would have that stubble. These Norse marauders probably aren't shaving on the reg, so you know they'd be bringing some stubble into the fight. Okay, more knights. Shocker there. Victor has his. I think this is the special character from the Tau. A lot of the same tricks in effect here as on the ethereal, just at a higher level. What I love about this one is his gem work. I think his gem work is absolutely top notch here. You see it on the back of the chair and up in this guy's staff.
Yeah, I gotta go with you on that. A lot of times when people are doing a smaller gem, you see that they have the white dot, right? And that always appears there to catch that particular shining point of light. But I actually want to draw people's attention to the guy who's on the lower left of the screen right now, and if you look at the top of his staff, it's a big enough gem up there that a simple single dot isn't going to do it. So Victor's recognized that, and he's got a greater surface area that's capturing that white flash on that. So a subtle difference that I think is a high-level point of taking care of that extra attention that piece needs.
Absolutely, yeah. Fantastic point. Yep. It really makes it sing, and it also reinforces the very, like, that perfect circular nature of that gem. It just really creates it in your mind. So, yeah. Okay. Alicia, any other thoughts on Awuva?
Well, in addition to like the little white dot argument, he's also gotten some shading within the gems to create the more glassy look to them. Because a lot of gems are not just solid color. As the light shifts through them, their color does darken and lighten depending.
Yep.
So yeah, this is another
and to return
little
back
trick.
to absolutely agreed. To return back to something I said earlier, this is the time when you get out that gloss varnish. So one of the final steps when you're doing gems is now you target some gloss varnish on that gem, and it will really complete the effect. This is one place where I will support a full-on gloss varnish. All right. All right, Revel with his executioners, and I think he's got like a Wish Elf BSB or somebody sneaking in here as well. But I love these guys. I really don't have much to say here to this Rebel. Every Dark Elf model I think you've ever submitted has been amazing. He did that unbelievable Black Dragon a couple months back. I love the color, the green against the purple. It's, again, great contrast. Green and purple work well together also. And if you need any proof of that, go see every supervillain ever, because supervillains always have that evil color combination of green and purple. I love it with the deeper gold here. It's not a bright polished gold. It's more of a coppery gold. Just really, really fantastic unit. I'm not sure if I have anything in the way of critiques, but Kieran, Alicia, any thoughts?
I'm actually going to offer a counterpoint. I love the green and the gold on the models, and I think that he's done a good job with the chick with the cup of blood. I don't know what the heck her name is, but I don't know that I particularly care for the purple on the banner. It doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't gel for me. I tend to like if you're going with that kind of dark green, I almost would have much rather instead of the purple have that coppery gold lining the banner instead to kind of completely draw you into this is one unit. It's completely cohesive. I get why the purple's there to kind of pull in the extra character model. Um, so I would give the counterpoint if you're going to do the purple and the green, I would almost flip the two and have the darker color framing the lighter purple.
Hmm. Yeah, I could see that. My two, I got two things, one up and one down to say about this one. First off, the brass armor is really well done. Transition to highlight from darkness is great. It's difficult to do sometimes that you tend to we talked about this in the form of gradients of color, and if I was to sort of make a generalization, I'm going to say that people have less selection of metallic colors in a color tone zone than they do of other primary colors. Right? Like I might have 5 different pots of green, but I only have 2 different pots of gold. So to make this look as good as it can, you still have to do that with metallics, just like you do with other things, instead of just going from your base metallic to your sharpest highlight with nothing in between. So well done on that, Mr. The Revel. My small bit of criticism is I'm looking at the banner itself as well, and it's the symbol that you've done on there. I think when you're doing white on a dark surface, the tendency is that you want to you kind of end up putting it on too thick to make that color bold and strong, but you really are better off in doing multiple thin layers of that, because you can, even at this small picture, I can see the thickness of the paint on there. So you'll have to just suck it up and do a bunch of thin layers to make that white come through.
Yep. You could also undercoat it with like a gold brown or a tan color, right? Something like that, where you lay that down first and then cover that completely with the white. Can also be a good attack strategy on that, because white will more easily overtake a sort of flesh tone or something in that mid-range yellow-brownish tone easier.
My go-to on that is a linen color that's the GW's paint that I use a lot is called Rackarth Flesh. It's a bit of a linen color, and I use that for softening the shock from a dark color into white.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good stuff.
There you go.
All right, Ryan Easterling with his 40K orcs. Du Bois. These are the very, a good friend of mine has a bunch of these. These are all the old 1990s 40K orcs.
And he's put goblin heads on a couple of them too, I think. At least that's what I think is going on. That little peanut head guy there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I dig it. He's explored some extra things too, and they were doing some tattoos and striping. On one earlier shot, I saw that he tried to do checkerboarding as well. Yeah. With a goblin head, I think.
I think you're right. I don't. It's so hard for me to remember these models. That very well may be true, or maybe they just look like that. Then it's hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My familiarity of 40K is dwindling and dwindling as the months tick past.
Sure.
Myself.
I think my notes here would be pretty straightforward, and that would be, I feel like you might need to thin some of these paints down a little bit in some places. It feels like I can just sort of feel thick paint here and there, where it looks like on a lot of these it feels like you're working with a fairly thick paint, especially when I look up at like this red and this black, that kind of thing, just those pieces. And then again, like it feels like we're gloss varnished again here, and it just makes your orcs look shiny. And if there's one thing that orcs should never be, it is shiny. They are a dirty, dirty people.
Yeah. The only shiny stuff they got is what they stole from others.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move on.
Very good. Another corn cannon, and it's so funny because I remember last month, I think, or 2 months ago, Kieran, we talked about how you really hate this model, and now we're going to look at another one.
As it turns out, I still do.
Alicia, I think you're going Domo Origato, Mr. Roboto on us there. So
Oh, no. All right.
I'll give you a second to fix that. So yes, but more classical interpretation here of the corn cannon, with the red and brass, as it were. He's actually mixed models here because he has the blood letters up front pulling the thing, which is the blood throne configuration, as opposed to writing behind like on the cannon. Not that that's a problem, just interesting choice. But I like this overall. I like his choice of the red and the brass as usual. I think if I was gonna make a few small notes on this flesh part, I feel like again, like when we look in here, I can't zoom in quite enough. Let me see if one of these shots has it a little more tightly on. I feel like this pink was dry brushed over red, and then the skulls were painted, because I can see the brush stroke and chalkiness here of what feels to me like some dry brushing. And what I would say is, if you're going to do this, if this is a very ridged, bumpy surface. If you want to start with a dry brush to really to get sort of the majority of the mapping down, I think that's a good strategy. But then what I would do is I would get in there and then get that same pink and start doing some layering to like cover this up, because this is a very high exposed place. If the recesses are supposed to be red, this should not be red as well. And you can even out that chalkiness with a layering over a dry brush.
Sorry to leave you hanging here, Vince. I'm looking away.
Oh, you're okay. I understand. No more corn cannons for you. Can't take them anymore. But other than that, good stuff. Alicia, you painted one of these. Any thoughts from yourself?
All right. Well, the back end, it looks like it's just all he's painted it completely that one bit of metal, and there's a lot going on back there that could have been dealt with. I mean, he could at least there's wiring coming out the back that you can see. He could have buried it up just a little bit with like brass fittings as well. But I mean, it's fine that he didn't. That's a choice. The blood letters, they're the exact same color as the main color skin on this model, so it's kind of hard to distinguish them from the cannon itself. Even if there was just like a shade difference, I think it could have helped.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Overall, though, very good. Despite Kieran's revulsion of this model, I do love it. I say bring forth the phallic cannon, and may you shoot flaming cannonballs right through your enemy's worst models. There you go. All right.
And my rebuttal is just find an alternate model and do those things that Vince said.
All right. Kieran, I wanted to look at this real quick. This was your Malifaux crew. Is that what they're called when they're the group of them?
They are called a crew, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
and the reason I just wanted to chime in here is because about the bases you had chosen. Now, Malifaux actually makes this range of colored bases, right?
Yeah, they do. They sort of sell them as faction matching bases. So they've assigned a primary color to each of the 7 different factions that they got. So you can go and buy a box of bases to match your faction. So I got talked into that. I thought I'd give it a go.
Now, what was your final thought on that?
Well, my final thought is I'm going to finish doing this crew with a couple more models that need to go with it, and then never do that again.
All right, your thoughts are the same as mine. I feel like you did such a beautiful job on these models, and when I'm looking at them, my eyes just keep going green base. You know, like I can't look away. It's so bright.
In fact, what I might do, honestly, I might ride it out for a little bit longer, but I can always just go and paint those base rims black anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So that might happen.
I don't know. I kind of like the green bases. With the models, they remind me like they're on jade. They look like they're just on jade bases to me.
Oh, well,
Oh, maybe that's why they picked that color for this crew.
maybe.
Beautiful work, though. I do love I love the crew.
Thanks.
All right. I know there's also some markers here. Just take a look at those real quick. Great little uses of a bunch of different random bits and such for your markers. Part of a dead horse and everybody's favorite tombstone out of the zombie box. Some actual zombies.
Yeah, you're right. It's just a crap usage from the bits box. This has some applications in Warhammer as well. There's reasons why you might want to have markers on your battlefield for maybe marking spell effects, for example. Especially if you're an ogre player and you want to mark this unit's got troll guts and this unit's got blood gorger or whatever. You can make some tokens for that, and might be a fun thing to explore for some of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, or even just objective markers and stuff like that, right? If you got a scenario with objectives to take or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, back to Matira with the Bastillodon. So here's this guy. You see the same skinks in effect. I guess my initial thoughts on this is I like the general color palette. I feel like it's a couple steps away from being done, is what I would say I feel like. And by that I mean the big gray scales are so sort of flat. I feel like they need a little more edging and highlighting, like that it needs to be one or two more shades of gray to white on there. Whenever you have these triangles, which I am exceedingly familiar with these little triangles, because boy do the Tomb Kings love those little triangles, and I've got about 8,000 points of painted Tomb Kings, so I have met you many times, little Mr. Triangle design. And I always like taking a highlight color and running it up one side of the triangle. You can work in more stark contrast where you have a hard line when you're working in the smaller you get, the more stark you can make the contrast to make it pop without it looking sort of, blatantly obvious. So I'd say I like that. And then finally the gem. The gem is probably the part of this that I think is the most needing some work, in that it looks like a big banana, as opposed to a big.
Yeah.
And that is because it is just yellow. It needs some tonal variation. Like if you ever hold a gem up in the light, gems are just full of 1,000 tonal variations, and certainly that's a very hard thing to capture. It's not an easy thing to paint, because every face of the gem is reflecting a slightly different tone of light, right? But I feel like this needs something, edging, highlighting, something. Again, you can't cheat your way with a gem. It's to be layering and stuff like that on every single face of the gem, because you can't dry brush it. It's too big, and you can't wash it because there's nothing for a wash to go into.
Yeah, I told him the same thing. If you look real close in like one of the pictures, you can kind of see what he's done with it. He did try. There is a little bit of like a brighter highlight on the edging.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, and this one on the front gem here, or is it?
It's
I guess
on
it is
both of
places,
them, but
okay.
yeah, I agree. It needs to be worked significantly more. He powered through this while I was at my mom's house, so I couldn't just go smack. You're not done yet. So he declared it finished and posted it.
Now, did he go back and actually paint the skink's eyes blue since then? I noticed we're missing our traditional blue eyes here.
I noticed that too. I don't know, actually. I haven't looked at this model.
Gotcha. That's the kind of thing I miss. Like, that's no fault on Material. I don't know how many times I posted a picture in the PmP and then looked and been like, oh, I didn't do that horse's eyes or something. Like, it just happens. You can stare at a model sometimes, for an hour, and then the key is walk away from a model and come back to it an hour later after not looking at it, and that's when you'll notice that stuff. If you've been turning it and painting it and turning it and painting it. You kind of will look over the same detail 100 times.
Yeah. I've seen a bunch of these Bastiladons, and it always comes down to that big, giant gemstone. Because it is the focal point of the model. Let's not fool ourselves.
Yep.
And it's the make or break part of the model. And it's a hard thing to make because, I mean, going back to some other gem examples that we've had earlier in this month's repertoire, you can't even get away with the expertise that Victor showed on his Tau stuff. There has to be a whole lot more color transition even than what he did on there to make something of this size comparatively. So it's a tough one, and I've only seen it done to an impressive degree only one time out of all the times I've seen these Bastiladons live.
Yeah.
So you're up against it.
It really is. It's a super challenging model. And let me just say, Materia, I by no means am I'm not trying to hit you where it hurts or anything, because honestly, the color choices I really like. I like the green underbelly. I like the gray scales. I think it works well with the orange and yellow gem. I feel like the color palette he's chosen to use here I like very much. Don't power through those lizard men too fast, just to get those points out for your narrative game. You got a great opportunity with painting them. But also it points out that, like, he got it painted. It's good. It's tabletop standard, and he can play it. But another good point is, a model's finished when you decide it's finished, right? He could always come back to this and do some more work on it. It's not just because you started playing with a model doesn't mean you can't go back and do more work on it. It's still your model, and you may paint it as much as you like.
Good enough.
All right. I just want to point out your little guy on an owl. I have this same fig, and I absolutely love this little guy.
Well, yeah, I tried to do this for St. Patrick's Day. I think I posted
Yes.
it up a couple days later, but yeah, that was my challenge to myself.
This guy gets used in a lot of D&D games around my house. Anytime a small gnome is riding on an unusual pet, boom, this guy comes out immediately.
Oh wow.
This is also a lesson in don't try to take quality photos of a model with your iPad, because it doesn't work.
I take all my photos with my iPhone.
Yeah, that's got a better quality camera in it than my crummy iPad.
You're still on like your iPad .1. So.
No, it's Generation 2 at least.
Oh, well, you're good then. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, more knights. This was just. I just want to flip over here real quick, just so we can see. There you go. I was very proud of that. So just to kind of flip to that for a second there, the two full lances.
Yeah.
Done. It was just a big moment. I was very proud to finish out those two lances.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you can be pretty happy about that. Well done, sir.
Yeah.
Well done.
So there we go. No need to dwell on it, but it's always great to anytime you hit a milestone like that, you feel good. It's one of the wonderful things about painting is when you hit something like that. So I know this model well. This is Paul Cunard again, and he painted this during the 8-hour paint-a-sode. This is one of the things he did. We're gonna get another one of those going soon, so don't worry. More super long paint-a-sode content is coming.
Oh, golly.
But here's his. This is a pretty old model, I think. I think this is from back in like the 90s. This old orc shaman. There's a lot of little elements. There's a lot of little elements to this that I love. He has the bright glowy cuts into the stick. I like the color on the orc lip. I think that's really nice, the sort of purple. But my favorite piece is that sword. Paul loves his non-metallic metals, and he's very good with them. And that's a wonderful example of some non-metallic metal steel in action right there. Any comments? Either you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I can reflect upon you that capturing a couple of different points of light on a non-metallic sword is always important to do, rather than just a single point. So he's done that here. If your eye draws you, you can see 3 different points of light where it really is its brightest, and it's at its darkest where it needs to be, and that's where the shaft meets the what's the technical term for that part of the sword?
The tang. Well, it's the tang is going into the hilt.
The hilt. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love that he's even darkened it appropriately where the cloth above it here would be casting a shadow down. Right?
Yep. Yeah, so it takes a bit of a study of light. It's more than just when people are doing this non-metallic stuff and directional highlighting, it takes more than just brush control and understanding paint. It's a little bit of a study of light as well that you need to be adept at. So good job, Paul. You seem to have a good grasp on that.
He's really good with it. Alicia, any other thoughts before we move on?
I love the staff. I like how he did it, but I think I would have chosen a different color, just because the orc is green, all the goblins are green. Green's a very prominent color in the army itself, and I think if he had gone with maybe an orange or a red, it would have stood out away from the orc's skin.
Fair enough.
A little better, yeah. But honestly, it looks good, so
That's fine.
that's it.
All right, good stuff. Moving on. So more of Tom's converted, all of his converted war machines for his spider stuff. So here we have his Doom Diver and a Spear Chukka and a Flinga, whatever.
Rock lava.
More rock lava. Thank you. Yes. More, and I love that this guy exists. This use of this shaman as his Doom Diver, I think, is just a fantastic find.
Is that what it is? I was wondering where he got it, because that is just awesome.
Yeah,
Give me a zoom in on that guy, if you can.
that is as zoomed in as we can get. Let me see if I have a close up in here somewhere. There we go.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's out of the Ragnarok kit too, isn't it?
Yep, it's the Great Shaman that comes out of the Ragnarok kit.
Yeah. Okay. I getcha. Well, Tom's getting the. I'm going ahead in our segments here, but I'm going to say that Tom gets my creativity award for the month. Certainly.
It's really a great thematic army, I will say, and again, it's got that purple and green going on together, works well. More of that goop on the ground, and what's funny is war machines are often such an expensive thing to acquire, and because it's you buy a cannon, it's like $25 or something crazy just for this cannon and 3 guys. But I mean, not only does this creativity, like the rope here was made, he handmade this rope just out of some wire that's wound together, and it looks like rope, and it really captured it. A lot of this he made very cost effectively, and I think it's thematic and fits. It's just a really great job. So yeah, there we go. Alicia, any thoughts? I know you're an orc and goblin fan, but not a spider fan. So I imagine you're torn on all of this.
He is still impressed the ever-loving crap out of me. I love these things. Like you take the spiders off of them and stick some squigs on there. I could be golden with this.
Fair enough. All right, all elves are dark. He finished up his some screamers here, and then as well he has just a nice little selection of some stuff here: corpse cart and some spirit hosts. Very unusual pink horrors in that they're not pink; they're sandy horrors, I guess.
They're earthy.
Earthy horrors, yes. But they look good. I very much like the blue flame and the blue spirits. I think that is a fantastic look. He did some great highlighting on those. I think those came out quite well.
Yeah, those are the ones that immediately attract my attention as well. So I'm keen on them. I'm keen on those models in general, and not just for the simplicity of what they are coming out of the box, but we've seen them in past used for other things, embellishing other models, including what was it? Tailby did some stuff with them, I recall,
Yes, he did.
months past.
Yeah, they're really a great conversion model as well, right? Because there's just so much they can do.
Yeah, a big utility plus for those things, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, great work all around here. I think
Yeah, it's a nice looking little collection
it
right
really
there.
is. I think if I was going to make any note, it would just be this one small thing, and that is that most of these models have a nice little contrasting piece of color. I feel like the dire wolves up here, or which I think is what they're supposed to be, I feel like I could have seen a little bit of a contrasting color piece here just to kind of pick them out because they kind of blend into the base. They look all brown, kind of brown, brown on brown. And that could have been done through maybe a little very conservative blood use and some red eyes, or maybe even some bright color on the base here or there. You know, just something to kind of make them pop a little. Like on the earthy horrors, he nailed it by having the sort of brightish purple tongue. Just that little bit of color that kind of makes the model come alive.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Mm-hmm.
But great work there, all elves. I painted some more stuff, including that Grail Reliquary and my damsel. There you go. There's that. And if no one has anything to say, let's.
Hang on a second. We can't gloss over a Grail Reliquary.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is one of the glorious rarities of the Warhammer sculpting collection. People need to look at this, and people need to appreciate the Grail Reliquary for what it is. I mean, just describe to the folks what's going on here, because immediately, if you just flash past this picture, you go, "Oh, that's a weird-looking knight with some. Is that some dude standing beside it?" But then you pay more attention, and so Vince, tell the people what they're really seeing here.
Yes. So the Grail Reliquary is several battle pilgrims, or as they're more commonly known, Bretonian peasants, carrying the corpse of a dead Grail Knight upon you can't see it very well, but they have a wooden stick they're using as his horse that they're holding him on. They've made a tail out of bells, and they're holding up the horse's dead skull up here where the horse's head would normally be, and they have the horse or the knight up here himself still with his lance in his hand with his Grail, and he is their sacred charge that they bear this corpse into battle to bring the blessing and favor of the lady onto the battlefield.
Obviously, I'm tipping my own personal bias here, but I think this is a marvelous piece of creativity by the guy that came up with this idea in the first place, and then the sculptor that executed it.
Yes.
Wonderful thing.
I've got to agree. I love this. I was so happy when I found that model. There we go. There's another angle of it, so you can see the peasants over here on the other side. I think it's a fantastic model, and I was very excited to get it and put it together.
Yep. Attaboy. Well done.
There you go. I was very happy with how this damsel came out. She was just a nice experiment in color blending. And I just, fairly smooth transition and stuff like that. And also red hair is always fun. I will say when you do red hair, don't be afraid to get into brighter tones like oranges and stuff and wash it out, and then don't be afraid to get some good washes going with Carrier Bird Crimson and even some Agrax and stuff if you want a more brown hair or if you want a more red hair. A lot of good options there. All right. And then shortly after that, I went ahead and decided I needed a third lance, so I just knocked out a whole lance of knights, and these are my knights errant. But so that's my unit that will be all the same. So there we go with the paladin leading them that they're all modeled after.
Yeah. If I can harken back to you had once bitten on as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and you had a little bit of a debate back and forth about what looks best, the uniform unit and the mixed unit of all kinds of different heraldries.
Yep.
So now that you've executed it yourself, what's your stance?
I think ultimately my stance is it's what's appropriate for the thing. I love these knights errant for what they are, which are, they look good and it sets them apart on the battlefield. But I think honestly deploying both is what I really love, because the knights errant, they're supposed to be these young knights. They don't have their own land yet. They're not lord, or they're not landed people, so they don't have their own heraldry. So hence they're all modeled after the paladin who is leading them into the force. Whereas with the other knights, and they're all their own landowners, and they're all their own basically little lords, I like how them all having their own thing. I think it makes the two set apart. In the end, I think that is the beauty of the Bretonnian force, is that it's sort of one of the ultimate painting challenges in Warhammer, and I feel like it's as rewarding, and I like both equally, because they look I feel like they serve a purpose when they're together. Does that make sense? Like, it's easy to distinguish what's what, and the narrative is being told through the painting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all that fluff reasons aside, maybe I'll pose the question to Alicia. What's your aesthetic preference? Mixed or uniform?
I like the mixed uniform knights better, because they're just so individual and dynamic. You got so much to look at. Like, you see a lot of uniformed units in every single Warhammer army, and Bretonnia has that nice aesthetic of having different guys. So you're not just sitting there painting the same guy over and over again. You get to have fun.
Good. All right, then. So we've settled it. Once bitten. There's your answer.
There you go. And his point was even deeper, of using, he likes the different models, but he likes sticking to sort of 4 primary colors, right? And if you go back, like, of staying sort of within a range of colors, like I think he said he picked basically a red, a yellow, a blue, and a green, and all of his knights are different combinations, different heraldry, but within those 4 colors. And I said, no, I'm looking for, I'm Skittles attack, I taste the rainbow all the way. Like, every time I sit down to a new knight, I just look at my whole paint collection and I'm like, what crazy colors can I use this time? If it's pink and purple, Easter Knight, let's go for that. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I'll just scan back here real quick. To like my Easter egg knight here. Like, there's nothing that's out of play as far as I'm concerned when it comes to Bretonnia.
Yep, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on, Victor did a 5-part paint series on this model. This is the Razor Wing, and I will say I absolutely love what he did here. All that red is freehand. It kind of got washed out in this picture, but there is a really nice highlighting even on the red. Like, I can't zoom in on this one. Let me see if there's one close enough where you can see it. There you go. You can kind of pick it out there. You can see the orange edge highlighting around the red. All the weapons are magnetized. I love the copper color transition. The base itself is scenic and beautiful. I mean, this is just an amazing centerpiece to an army.
I think that what I want to pipe in and talk about here is painting black. And there's a guy locally here who has won a few Golden Demon entries, and we had a discussion about black, and I want to share this, and that is that black is never quite black, except for in the deepest, darkest recesses of it. So even when you're doing big armor panels like this, it can only be black right in the deepest of edges. So how do you achieve this with the color gradient without it looking like a gray model instead of a black model? And his explanation to that is that you have to pick one sort of color tone that you're going to mix in, and you can choose to go warm or cool with it, but it's always going to be a little bit off black throughout most of the model. Just like white is almost invariably always going to be a little bit off white rather than absolute pure white. And it takes a whole lot to achieve. I've tried it a few times, and I'm always dissatisfied with it. but I just thought of that when I was looking at this model, and I thought it was worth a little bit of a discussion just to make people think about that, and hopefully they can experiment, because I don't have the answer, but I just wanted to put it out there to think about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Whenever I paint black, my best friend is this little bottle of Vallejo model color German gray. And it is a super dark gray. Like, if you look at it, if I just show you the paint and just put the paint on a model and you look at it alone, it looks black. If I put it next to true black, you can see the gray tone, right? And that's like, so this is one of my best friends. And I'm pretty sure Citadel has a color in the line that's close to this. But like, yeah, getting that very close to black gray is a good simple one. But I think to your point, you can go for just a hint of purple, a hint of blue, right? And just move it just slightly into one of those other color tones. And that's actually how black looks most of the time.
Yep.
A hint of brown, right, is often a good one if you're going for like black leather or something like that. Black leather has this hint of brown in it at the highlights. So yeah, agreed completely.
Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say here. I just thought this was a good opportunity to talk about black. Done.
Very good. Alicia, any other thoughts on the Razor Wing here?
No, you guys covered it. We're good.
Cool. Fantastic work, Victor. I mean, really amazing. Ah, here we go. Yes, speaking of more knights from Mr. Kieran, the rest of your... You and I, this is where I busted your chops over high elves, but I must admit, looking back, you had plenty of other things in there as well.
Yeah. I'm done with Reaver Knights now. That's the achievement.
There you go.
Painted all 20 of them, so I don't own any more. It's over.
Now, Kieran, I feel like, to be fair here, I've got to bust your chops just a little, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so...
On my boring bases?
That's, yes. That's exactly right. Are they just riding across? Are they attacking Nehekara? Is that what's going on? Just like over the Arabian sands?
They're on the beachhead.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, throughout my high elf army, there's a few different basing schemes. Some of them are actually in water. They're more than ankle deep in water, and some of them are on the beachhead, and some of them are in some little bit deeper grassy lands with a few bits of foliage shoots coming up, some viney stuff. So over the course of the whole army, there's some variation, but within units themselves, not that much.
Gotcha. Well, I feel like all you need to do then, Kieran, is just hand make out of some green stuff some tiny little shells and paint them, so that way that we know they're on the beach.
Or he can do some seaweed, or get some like little bitty crabs.
Oh, there you go, tiny crabs.
Tiny crabs. Yeah. Have them hanging off the skirts of the horses as they run past.
Yeah, just one little piece clapped on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just going along for the ride. Very, very nice though.
I accept your criticism.
All right, so here we have. We're almost to the end of the month here. In fact, we're pretty much at the end of the month, but we'll take just a couple more. Ryan Easterling this is the toughest girls in the galaxy. They delivered their first Kickstarter, and now they're on number 2 is being kickstarted. If you like really cool female models, check it out. But this is the one here.
I am kind of intrigued by this model, actually. I mean, as far as painting goes, he looks like he's just done base coats throughout it, but it's a dynamic model, and I'm intrigued by that.
I am fascinated by the fact that it has no face.
Yeah,
which he said is what it's supposed to have. Like, it does not have a face.
Yep.
He did not forget to model something or anything like that. She just has no face.
But yeah, she has hair.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's attached to the
clothes.
hood. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Yeah, what I would say here, Ryan, is we need to see some highlights here. Working in red is a real luxury because red is a super translucent color. It is one of the easier colors to work with and highlight through layers because it's naturally see-through. So what I would love to see over here on the on the upper part of this red plate or the edge here, or out on the upper levels of this cloth, is just some brighter reds really picking this out, and that kind of thing. Same with the purple. Purple's a little tougher because purple looks really stark in the highlights, but something like that up here, and then on these edges of this cloth here, just some highlights out there to really make this model pop.
I'll quickly share my purple highlight tip that I learned over the course of doing these high elves of mine, is that you eventually mix in flesh tone to get your ultimate highlights of purple. Works good.
Yeah,
Not white.
That's a great piece of advice. Yes, not white. Absolutely, not white. You can also go, if you want to take it into the blue tone, you could also go for a blue, like a lighter blue color, right? And that will also move it up if you don't mind transitioning it over to a different color.
Yep.
My one thing, and this has nothing to do with him, so this isn't a criticism on Ryan, just the one thing I wanted to point out with this fig is I find her modeling stance really weird in that it looks like she's got a gut. And, I mean, she clearly doesn't. She's arching her back all out, so the armor plate is getting pushed forward. But it's just a weird modeling choice. Like, she looks pregnant there. It looks like a pregnant Minnie.
I agree with that because, like, it looks like her back. If her back was arched as much as it is, it's broken.
She got a vertebrae out of place. I'm not sure about the modeling on that choice, but other than that, it's cool Minnie.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is supposed to be a pregnant faceless lady.
Could be. Is she birthing the void? I don't know. Like it's okay. Deep questions. Here's and then we saw some of Nick Fenske's army last month, and this is the rest of it here. Some more Glade Guard and his old school Cauldron of Blood, as well as his Reaper Bolt Thrower.
Yeah, Nick.
And I think we'll
what I want to commend about Nick is he's really explored some good modeling things here. He's doing a blended elf army, so he's the guy that's really embraced the end times Kane possibilities of all three elf choices working together, and he's tried to tie in their aesthetic to varying degrees of success. I'll give it to you, Nick. You've done more with it than I thought could be done, because they do feel to me like very distinct, different elf aesthetics, but you found a way to get them a little bit closer together than I thought was possible.
Yeah, like just to jump back to this picture real quick, I like all of these little edges of these hoods and their fuzzy boots. I know all of that's green stuffed on, right? And so just, I mean, like an amazing amount of work into this, and it really, I really like how these Blade Guard came out. And I agree, you know, they're tied together, but you can still tell, like, yep, that's a dark elf, that's a wood elf, right? Like, which I think is still good. That's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So it has come through, but the color scheme does tie them together. Little note on the banner here goes back to the thing we mentioned earlier about the white, is that you can see that this probably could have been, like, it's just a tiny little banner, and so you probably want to spend a lot of time on it. But I think some thinner layering up here from a mid-tone something would have paid off this snowflake a little more, because it's you know, it's white, of course, doesn't want to go over anything. It's very see-through.
Yep.
And then the other model I will point out is, of course, we have to talk for a moment about the hot time in the hot tub, with his converted Cauldron of Blood into a hot tub. This may be one of my favorite conversions ever. I think this is a hilarious use of a Cauldron of Blood, even with a little fire underneath it and everything. So that's just, I'm not sure about his use of snow in the fire. You might want to be a little more careful there with your rock salt next time. I don't think the snowflakes would be resting in the flames. That seems like a bit of a problem. But I will give the model itself and the aesthetic choice 2 thumbs up.
I knew you'd be a fan of that.
I am a simple man, and I have simple tastes. What can I say?
Good.
All right.
No,
Great work, Nick.
One thing in closing here, I caught on another news feed that Nick won himself an award at Adepticon for this particular army.
Yes, he did. Absolutely. Yeah, so
kudos.
congratulations on that.
Congrats. Keep on keeping on.
That's right. I believe the fuzzy ball on top of Kane here is converted too, right? His fuzzy ball hat.
Yeah, that's probably not a natural thing.
I don't think that looked like that normally. I love that he
No.
gave Kane a fuzzy stocking cap ball,
Mhm.
which is somehow that just makes Kane seem much more less threatening if he's got a fuzzy ball hat. Tuna with his Bullywug Ranger for D&D. I like how this guy came out. Now here's a frog I can get behind.
Is this a real range of models, or is this just a one-off? Are you aware?
Let's see where he says they came from. If he does. He does not say where.
Because if that's a whole range,
Oh, there you go. From
with some variety, I'm in.
both the models are from Warmahordes. There you go.
Oh, really? Huh.
Apparently they've got frog people.
That is sweet.
That is a great model.
Yeah, the world's been clamoring for fish people for ages, but you know, if there's toad people,
Beyond Slan.
most of the way
Yes. Like, absolutely. I'm hoping when the lizard men crash back down to Earth, the Slan have just multiplied into a frog person army.
Into
I think you'll be
bullywugs.
Yeah, into Bullywugs.
there. Yeah, it's a cool model. I'll dig it.
And then they need a unit called Bullywug Thugs. That would be their
Yeah.
core unit.
Yes.
All right. Great work, Tuna. I don't have much feedback for you on that one, other than good use of this model. I love him. I think that'd be a fun character in D&D for sure.
Yeah.
And I think lastly we have Chris and Whoopi. So we'll just look at this because this is another good example of what we talked about earlier. We'll open and close with kind of the same thing. Whoopi again doing these really dramatic color transitions all over and these repeated highlights glazes and then dry brushes and so on. And I really like the look of this guy: the green, the red, the white, the brown. A lot of different colors going on here, and I think it works well. Now, is the staff okay for the tree man to have, Kieran?
Yeah, because it's a natural thing. It's not some manufactured sword or anything like Dirthu has.
Okay. Staff, yes.
Oh, just to
sword,
catch people up who are listening, Vince and I had a head-to-head the other day about Dirthu carrying a sword and how unnatural I thought that was. But he thinks it's fast.
I don't know how natural carrying a staff is for a big tree guy. Because if you think about it, to have a staff big enough, that's an arm off of some other tree guy. He is literally carrying around some disembodied piece of another tree man. How natural is that? I mean, or are we just not caring?
Well, I mean, it could be a branch that's already lying on the ground that's been dismembered from a tree already. But
well, the counterpoint to that would be
how does a tree man go to the forge and make himself a sword?
sure. I think Alicia's point would be even if it's a branch that fell to the ground, you Kieran, find an arm, a human arm on the ground. Okay, is that okay to pick up and carry around as a weapon? Like, I think you're gonna find that. Well, no one was using it. I just found it on the ground. It's just a disembodied human arm. It's not. I didn't cut it off of anybody. Jeez, calm down.
All right, fine. We're going down a rabbit hole with this argument, so I'll pull out now.
But good job, Whoop. Excellent work. I really do like this tree man. I think you did a great job, and I love this tree man model. I could, it's really one of the great crimes of the Wood Elves is that the tree army is so terrible. Because I would love to do an all tree army. Maybe next time. All right. And then finally, this is Topher, another guy I know, and he's doing his archers here.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's gone very sharp and tidy with it here, and I do appreciate that. It's classic high elf cleanliness. But I do want some. I want to ask for some color tone in that white, though. I still do. Much in the same way that black is not always entirely black, white is never purely white either. So we need some some delineation of color and some tonal shift in there.
Yeah, I think my main feedback on this would be a lot of these elves have too similar of hair color. Right? They all, I feel like this is all, they all almost have the exact same hair color. And I think you could do with breaking that up a little, Topher.
They probably don't all come from the same mom.
Right. And even if they did, it'd still be different, probably.
And I would just add, like, cleaning up the base. Even if you don't want to put, like, flock or anything on it, but just cleaning it up, just making it one solid color at very least, will help the look of the model as well.
Yep.
Well, I can imagine he's probably going back to that later to do that job. But I think I do see some promise here that he's exhibiting some good brush control for the sharpness of the lining that he's doing on these models.
Mm-hmm.
So I look forward to more of that.
Yeah, he's putting together quite a little high elf force, which is funny because he plays several games with my other buddy Tom, who's doing the Spider Goblin army. But Tom's main army is also high elves. So there's a lot of intra elven conflict apparently around about their tables. It's very appropriate to sort of Kane end times. There's a lot of intra elven fighting, so they're just playing the narrative.
Yep, that's fine.
All right, and there we go. That takes us to the end. So let me go ahead and stop. Well, actually, I'll wait to stop sharing here. Let's very quickly. What do we got for our favorites? Everybody note their favorites as they went.
Yep. Yeah, I'll go first, and I already tipped this one to you, but my favorite for this month just goes to modeling creativity, and that goes to Tom with his war machines for his forest goblins.
You suck.
Oh, did I steal yours? Did I steal yours?
Yes.
It's okay. You can have the same one.
No, give me a minute. Let me look.
I'll buy Alicia some time.
You go next, Mencia.
That's fine. There was a lot of great models this month. I really am very impressed by a lot of what people did. In the end, though, there was one winner for me. And even though it's not a fantasy model, I love it too much. And being able to watch the whole series of watching him make this and just the hours of love and care he put into this model, Victor's Razor Wing. I love the detail of the freehand, the edge highlighting, the magnetization, the color choices, the basing, the scenery, the Dead Space Marine. The fact that he made these rocks out of styrofoam and then purposefully sprayed them with an aerosol can to melt them to make it look like slagged rock, right? So actually using the fact that aerosol melts styrofoam to his advantage to use that in the modeling. Yeah, I love everything about this piece. Victor, this just blew me away.
Good on you.
All right, Alicia, on the hot spot.
All right. Dice miniature paint guys, Blood Bowl guys, because I liked how they looked, and when I saw the one guy with the football, even before I knew what the heck it was, I was like, "That's awesome." I like that.
There you go. I do love that Skin Wolf model. That is pretty sweet. And yes, I got to give a thumbs up to this one for all the reasons we talked about. You got to love some Norse football players. They probably run at you asking you if you lift.
Yeah, nice tans, 5 o'clock shadows.
Absolutely.
Men's men.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that neither of you said corn cannons. So we can still be friends.
All right, let's stop sharing there. Back to reality now.
Yeah. Although now you got to sit up straight, Vince.
I do, yeah. With my lean, yeah, I'm like way back.
In the full-on recline position. Was somebody bringing you drinks while you were
There
down
we
there?
go. What's that?
Was somebody bringing you drinks while you were down there?
Oh no, no drinks for me. All right. So there we go. I think at this point I'm not sure if we've got any questions, but I feel like 2.5 hours in, we probably want to maybe call it there, or maybe closer to 3, I guess. So I can take a quick look just to see if there was anything burning up the people's comments. Let's see. Caleb was watching us, and he said this would be a good way to end his week. Well, we're glad to help. Ryan Eastling, where in response to my comment of if you are addicted to Citadel, he tells us he's not addicted. He can quit anytime he wants. Doom and Darkness was also checking in with us, as was Whoopi. Whoopi, I sent you an invite. Why didn't you get in here, buddy? You could have joined us. We would have loved to have you. All right. Let's see. Oh, Whoopi was blowing us up. Kale was also checking in. Oh, so let me clarify something. Kale had a statement about multiple Ragnarok kits. Maybe cost-effective isn't really accurate. So real quick, Kale, to clarify, he didn't buy multiple Ragnarok kits. He bought multiple Ragnarok bits with a B, because you can order those individual bits actually quite cheaply. I assure you, much cheaper than you can the whole Ragnarok or even other war machines. So yeah, that's what that's one point there.
That's good to know.
Yeah, there's
yes. I'm not recommending you go out and buy 3 Ragnaroks.
There's a number of those that I've discovered that are bit services where they'll open up a box and sell the sprues separately in a lot of cases.
Yep.
At least the sprues separately, if not each individual bit from the plastics.
Yeah, there's a couple on eBay. If you just go to eBay and type, sort of Warhammer Fantasy bits, you'll probably find a couple of sites. But there's, I don't too much loyalty, but Bullet Bits and Bits World and Horde Bits. You get the naming convention here. And most of them have storefronts that you can go to and search by army or type, find weapons or terrain and all sorts of stuff. So very useful stuff.
Bits with a Z for those of you searching.
Yes.
Or Z if you live in the United States.
And Whoopi Whoopi also tells us that treemen use the limbs of their brothers to show dominance. So there you go. That's why they have each other's limbs.
Limbs, double meaning.
Yes. And then I feel like so Ryan Easterling asked us a question that I feel like Ryan, I don't think we want to answer it right yet because I feel like it would take a long time to talk through. But I think it's an awesome question, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the question, and if it's all right with you, Ryan, I'd like to tee it up for next month. So maybe we could open next month's show with an answer to it. The question was, what is a painting technique for each of us that we struggle with and find to be constantly challenging? So I thought that's a great question. I don't want to pull it off the top of our heads. So is everybody all right with kind of thinking about that over the next month, and maybe we open next show with talking about a very challenging paint technique that we've had?
Yeah, I promise to
That could be good.
monitor that all month long.
There you go. Absolutely. I will spend 30 days in quiet contemplation at the top of a mountain. And
I'll forget about it and try to think about it the day of.
there you go. Well, maybe we can even find somebody's model who we think did something we find challenging pretty well. So there you go. All right. So everybody out there in the PmP, all you got to do is guess what we find challenging and then really succeed at that. So that should be easy. All right. So let's close it out. Thank you to everybody who submitted. If you know anybody who wants to join the PmP, or if you want to join the PmP, you can search for the PmP and then just send a request to join. Or you can always contact myself or Alicia or Kieran or Whoopi, and we will happily give you the information and bring you in. Any closing thoughts from both of you?
Well, I think not especially. We've done enough chatting. I hope that for those of you that watch this either now or later, um, have picked up at least one or two things that you can go away with to experiment with out of our discussion tonight, and use the examples of the fine artists that we've looked through the past month, and please continue to try to improve and expand on your hobby. That's my thoughts.
Very good. Alicia, any closers?
Don't eat yellow snow.
Good advice in general. Now that it's springtime, there should be much less worry about that. Although I don't know where Kieran's at. Maybe they're still locked in, 3 or 4 feet of ice up there in the Great White North.
Yeah, it's still tough to distinguish the polar bears from the ground. So sometimes, like when I'm running for the bus in the morning and I step on a polar bear cub, that's bad news.
Yeah, you gotta immediately start. You gotta bob and weave and run sideways and such to confuse the bears. I get it, absolutely. I've watched the shows. All right, well, very good. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you to everybody who submitted. Keep up the great work. Fantastic job, everyone. And we will see you next month. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.